their own devices with them should ensure their cameras are switched off and, very importantly, their device microphones and speakers are muted for the duration of the meeting. Otherwise, if we've had it demonstrated, this causes feedback on the council sound systems. Helen, can you amend? Public speakers contributing to the meeting virtually should switch their cameras off and put their microphones on mute until they are invited to speak by the chair. It's not permitted for any by any member of the public viewing by Teams or within the council chamber to contribute to the meeting at any time. Should any member of the planning committee wish to speak, please raise your hand and catch my attention, or the vice chair, Tony, the legal advisor, or indeed lead officers. When members in the chamber speak, please remember to switch on your desk microphone so all those in attendance and viewing can hear you. Please do not use the chat function within Teams for anything. All contributions should be made verbally. Please can all mobile phones be set to silent? Thank you for the housekeeping this afternoon. I will now move on to apologies, and we have a number of them. Helen, would you like to confirm?
Yes, first, before I give apologies, could I ask that Mr. David Wood, who's joined online, can you put your camera off, please? It's, if you don't mind. Whilst Mr. Wood's doing that, the apologies we've had are from councillors Helen Kay, Philip Ham, Adam Boyden and Susanna Hart. We have substitutes, Councillor Shane Collins for Helen Kay, Councillor Alistair Hendry for Philip Ham, Councillor Simon Carswell for Adam Boyden, and no substitute for Councillor Hart. And I can't see Councillor Claire Sully has arrived as yet, so I'll just note that she's currently absent.
Thank you for that. Right, we'll now move on to the agenda in front of us. And we have a number of items this afternoon, but for the housekeeping, I will move on to minutes of the previous meeting. These were circulated in advance. They're pages 13 to 24 for those who are looking at the paper pack. And I will ask if there are any amendments to these minutes. I will start it off by saying in the minutes, it refers to a comment from myself referring to tinted glass on the Rubbery Farm application. It's on page 20 and then item number 15 on the minutes. And I actually didn't use the word tinted. I said appropriate glass. I think it's important that we don't necessarily dictate how something happens, but the outcome. And so the officer is going to actually refer to reduce light spillage to less than 30%. And I think that is probably the more appropriate way to go ahead with this. But I definitely do want to remove the word tinted from the description. Any other comments on the minutes? Otherwise, could I have a proposer and a seconder for them? I have a proposer in Councillor Robbins and a seconder in Councillor Lovell. Thank you very much indeed. Everyone content with the minutes? Yep, I see no decline. Right, we'll then move on to the next item on the agenda. And apologies, too many pieces of paper. And this is planning application 5. I've asked the legal officer to start this item. Oh, my apologies. Thank you for that. I do need to be prompted. Yes, thank you. Declarations of interest. Are there any specifically on these items? These are the ones in addition to the Twin Hatters, which we have on the council website. No declarations of interest, and I've not been notified of any public questions. Great. Okay, then, thank you. Right, we're now at item 5, application regarding land at Marston Road, Frome. And I've asked the legal officer to give some advice to members of the committee, as we had a email notification this morning, and I think we need to have some information on that one.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I've been advised this morning that the members of this committee and our Democratic Services Officer have received an email from a Miss Tessa Hampton, who is speaking on the first item, enclosing a document that she wants to speak to and has emailed around this morning. The constitutional position on this is absolutely clear. We're looking at the Planning Committee Terms of Reference, and that's Part D8 of the Constitution. We are looking at paragraphs 419 and 420, where the Council's position is absolutely unequivocal here. Paragraph 4.19 says that only materials submitted to Planning and Democratic Services 2 working days before the meeting may be circulated, and 4.20 says circulating documents during the meeting is not permitted. So this communication that has come in today from Ms. Hampton is late, and therefore the legal advice is that you should ignore it and it should not be accepted into this meeting. I also understand that there may be a question of photographs with another application, but the same legal position applies to that.
Thank you. Any questions of the legal officer? Yes.
It's actually on a slightly different site. So if any members had a question about that point, I'd encourage them to go first. But it was just one of the members that's present on the committee at the moment did raise a formal objection on the first application. So the question is to legal, given that they've formally objected to the first application, whether they need to excuse themselves from the committee for the first item.
The legal advice here is that on the face of it, there is a predetermination, but however, if there has been updates since the first application, and that has led them to be able to say that they have come to this meeting with an open mind, that may be acceptable, but it's a matter for the member.
Thank you. I was just looking in the direction of the member, but it's Councillor Shane Collins. You have objected to the first application. So the question is whether you feel, as the committee member, you can sit sorry, I was looking in the wrong direction. I apologise on the end. But whether you can sit on the committee impartially, given that you've raised a formal objection on the case, or if you are excusing yourselves from the committee for the first item.
Would you like to respond, Councillor Collins?
Yes, I mean, my reason for raising the initial objection was to make sure that it came to planning board. Since then, I have looked through a lot of other papers and bits that have been, reports that have been added, although I must say last night and still today, I can't access a lot of the papers on the website, but I'm not predetermined. Yeah, I mean, that the reason for doing that was to make sure that it came to planning board. I might have worded it different, but our routes for getting it to the planning boards have changed quite a bit.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you record Councillor Sally has joined us now? Right, okay, thank you for that. Any other comments on that, or on the legal advice? Are people content?
Chair, on the question of Councillor Collins, if he can confirm to this committee that in regard to the item in question, he comes with an open mind, then the advice would be that he can continue to remain. But we need that confirmation from him.
Yes, I can confirm that I'm coming here with an open mind and not predetermined.
Okay, people content with that? Thank you for that. We'll then move on to the presentation from the officer on the Marston Road application. Amelia Helvey.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just loading it up. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. This is the first item of committee this afternoon. So it is the application on land at Marston Road in Frome for the demolition of a building and erection of a care home, construction of electrical substation, parking, alterations to existing access, landscaping and associated infrastructure. The application is before members as the proposal is for a major development, and the view of the Town Council and 2 division members is contrary to the officer's recommendation. Since the publication of the report, there is just one small verbal update to provide, is that there has been a very minor alteration to the wording of the LEMP condition, just to reflect the hedgerows that are there. So the application site currently accommodates a dwelling with an extended garden. To the south and east of the site lies industrial and retail units. To the north and west, there are residential properties. In terms of the story of the application, so there has been a 2-stage pre-app advice approach taken. So the first response related to principle of development, and it was set out that the proposal could be supported as a care home use, would generate jobs, and that any application made should set out the scale of job creation that would arise from the proposal. Additionally, it was confirmed that bed spaces would count towards the 5-year housing land supply. The second pre-app related to design, amenity and landscaping. Comments from the placemaking team were provided setting out that consideration should be given in respect of the building being fit for purpose, that the design of the building could be improved through material finishes and form to reduce massing. Following the pre-app advice, the proposal has been amended to increase the level of landscaping that is to be provided, particularly along the northern boundary. Additionally, elevations have also been amended to simplify the palette of materials. And there's also been changes to the boundary treatment between the proposal and the residential properties to the north. So just to confirm, the application seeks consent for the erection of a 76-bed care home with alterations to the existing access. So this slide shows the proposed elevations that would face the boundary shared with the residential dwellings and industrial building. The proposal would be for a 2-storey building with the central block that covers the transition of site levels being 3-storey when viewed from the southeast, but the appearance of 2-storey from other directions due to the subterranean basement level. The development is proposed to be finished with buff render and stone with some metal cladding. There are a variety of architectural features included within the design, such as around the windows and a staggering of the building to break up the linear form. This drawing now shows the elevation that faces the boundary with the range to the southwest. This slide shows a series of northwest elevations, so from the Marston Road side of the development, showing the staggered layout of the site. So the first image is the sort of first view you would see, and then as you move into the site, what you then see. Obviously, they are sections, so you've got a greyed out area to show where the sort of building form is. And these are the elevations that face towards the boundary shared with Essex Fields Road to the southeast. As previously mentioned, the middle elevation is the main view of the 3-storey element. However, this is also screened from Wessex Fields given the intervening 2-storey block. We then move on to proposed floor plans. So this is the proposed lower ground floor plan that is within the southeast wing of the proposed building. Bedrooms are to be provided along with communal areas and service rooms. The proposed upper ground floor extends across the entire footprint of the proposed building. Along with bedrooms and communal rooms, a visitor's lounge, residence shop is also proposed along with other service rooms such as nurse stations, offices and stores. And this is the proposed first floor plan, which is located within the northwest wing of the building. Again, communal rooms and bedrooms are provided along with staff rooms. Site sections have also been provided to demonstrate the site level changes across the site and how the building would be viewed in its context. So the two-storey element adjacent to Marston Road would have a maximum height of approximately 7.4 metres, with the two-storey element of the central section having a maximum height of approximately 8 metres. In respect of the southeast two-storey wing, this is proposed to have a maximum height of approximately 7 metres, with the central three-storey element with a max height of 11.25 metres when it's viewed from that side of the site. However, as previously set out, this three-storey element is within the main building complex and is therefore well screened from surrounding viewpoints. And also because of the partial, where it covers the transition and site levels, it would only be seen as three-storey from that side of that block. Additional sections showing that the building height is comparable to the surrounding structures have also been provided. As well, on the top drawing, you can also see the proposed substation. So I move my cursor, where does it come out? It doesn't. Oh, okay. So that is the proposed substation, which is adjacent to the boundary shared with the range. So other site sections have also been provided with building heights, including the building height of the existing dwelling, which is in the red dotted line, that is to be demolished. So the drawings demonstrate that the proposed building height is comparable to that of the existing dwelling and the surrounding residential properties, both those across the road and next to the site to the north. Additionally, proposed street scene drawings have also been provided to depict the proposed impact on Marston Road. So that top image is existing with the bottom one proposed. This is another drawing showing sections to demonstrate how the building would compare to the properties across the road, which is the top drawing. So this is if you were on Marston Road looking towards the north. And then the bottom drawing is dwellings adjacent to the site. We now move on to photos. So this is a combination of Google Street View as well as officer photos. So the red arrow indicating the site, you can just about see the house there that is to be demolished for the proposal. So this is the view of the approach to the site along Marston Road from the south. And then this is as you've gone past the site and then you've sort of turned around to look back. So this is the view of the existing site access and the roof of the dwelling that is to be replaced by the proposal. And we now move on to officers' photos. So this is the dwelling that is proposed to be demolished. This is a view in the rear garden of that property looking towards the north and the boundary shared with the residential properties. And then this is a view within the site towards the southeast, so towards the more commercial area. A view towards the southern boundary. And then a view from within the site towards the north. So those houses there are across the road on Marston Road. We then got photos as well from neighbouring properties. So this is a view from a first floor window of a neighbouring property. So the yellow star indicates the property that this photo was taken from. And then this is a view from the garden of the next property along. So that chimney is the building that is to be demolished. And then this is a view from another first floor window of another property. So it's the next property along. That tree that you see in the foreground is protected by a TPO. And then just another view. And then from the garden of that property as well, again, that tree is the same tree that's protected by the TPO. Okay, so considering the principle of developments, I've split this into sort of 3 different sections. So the local plan policy CP1 sets out that to enable the most sustainable pattern of growth, The majority of the development will be directed towards the 5 principal settlements, with Frome being one of these. Additionally, policy DP14 sets out that proposals for care homes or similar specialist accommodation that meets an identified local need will be permitted in accordance with the plan's overall spatial strategy, and that all such development should be accessible and proportionate in scale to the locality. The application site is within the development limits of Frome. I think that pin's quite small, but it is about there, with the red line being the development limit. Considered to be in an accessible and sustainable location, and the scale of development is also considered to be acceptable as set out further in the presentation. Adult social services have been consulted on the application and considered that the proposal would meet a rising demand for care homes in the area. This is based on current capacities of existing care homes in the vicinity and the demographic of the area relative to the projected growth through to 2035. Policy CP6 of the local plan sets out the town strategy for Frome, within which it is identified that provision for new jobs will be made through mixed use, redevelopment, or through redundant or underutilised employment sites within the town area where they arise. Part of the site falls within the existing employment land allocation set out by policy DP25, and therefore was advertised as a departure. The policy sets out that the council will support proposals which maintain the integrity of and support investment in jobs, premises and infrastructure within the established employment areas. The policy sets out that for proposals relating to the change of use to non-employment sites require marketing and business evidence. To clarify, the application site is not within a future employment growth area, which policy DP25 has further requirements for. Additionally, the policy requires a marketing exercise if proposals are for a change of use to a non-employment use. However, given that the proposal seeks to provide 75 full-time equivalent jobs, it's not considered to be required for this application. In respect of the Frome Neighbourhood Plan, policy BE1 states that redevelopment of valuable employment sites for non-employment uses will be resisted, and such development would only be granted in exceptional circumstances, where it can be clearly demonstrated that no demand exists within the area for B1, B2 or B8 uses. However, the policy states that this is when such sites are to be redeveloped for non-employment uses, and therefore it is not considered that for this proposal, such a demonstration is required, given that there is an employment element to the scheme. Policy DP20 of the local plan sets out that proposals for development of land allocated for Class B uses for other employment use are supported, where such schemes provide an employment generation that is comparable and does not prejudice the council's wider employment land strategy. The policy that allocates the site for employment land does not specifically require this area of land to be used for Class B uses. Whilst this type of use does form a part of the overall Marston Trading Estate and Wessex Fields employment site, it is considered that the use of the site for an alternative employment use would not be detrimental, given that the area of the site is a small portion of the overall employment site, that the use is is considered to be more compatible with the existing residential properties, and that there is no specific requirement for the land to be used for Class B employment generating use. Additionally, there are a variety of uses within the trading estate that also fall out of Class B uses, such as retail warehouses, food outlets, gyms, and a dog groomer. Considering national policy, the NPPF sets out that within the context of establishing housing need for an area, different groups should be considered, and this includes the need for care homes. Planning practice guidance also sets out that LPAs need to count housing provided for older people, including residential institutions, as part of their housing land supply. The East area can only currently demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply of 2.84 years. As such, the tilted balance is engaged as set out by paragraph 11, which requires planning permission to not be refused unless there is a significant and demonstrable harm that outweighs the public benefit of a scheme. Planning policy have confirmed that a proposed 75-bed care home would be counted as a net gain of 35 dwellings. In terms of health infrastructure, a number of third-party comments have raised concerns that the proposal would increase pressure on the existing local health infrastructure network that is anecdotally experiencing insufficiencies. The NHS have been consulted on the proposal and have advised that as care home residents are often visited at their place of residence,
the Integrated Care Board cannot request a contribution to proportionately increase the existing primary care infrastructure. The comment continues to advise that there is already a sufficient care home capacity within the area, but the proposal could lead to an increased pressure on GP surgeries in the vicinity. As previously set out, adult social care have been consulted on the application and advised that there is a need in the area due to existing capacity and the projected population figures. The NHS have also set out in their comment that they have directly shared details of the proposals with local GP surgeries. No responses have been received by the council from any of the GP surgeries. Therefore, given that the relevant consultations have been undertaken and no objection raised or mitigation requested, it's considered that in this respect, the proposal is acceptable. Moving on to visual amenity and landscape. So the proposal has been designed to be fit for purpose for the end user, creating a modern care home that meets the requirements of its clients and is an operational design. The proposal includes a flat roof with a low parapet, mix of material detailing. The linear building that's proposed has projecting elements with a central element to allow for a split level of the site. Additionally, the use of the projections is considered to help break up the bulk of the building. Considering further the potential impact on visual amenity, the series of sections that have been provided demonstrate that the proposed height of the building is comparable to the surrounding existing buildings and that of the dwelling that is to be replaced. Concerns have been raised by some third parties regarding the proposed changes in site levels. So hoping you can see on the slide that the sort of dotted line is the existing site profile. So it gradually decreases as it goes towards Wessex Fields, with the more angular step being the proposed site level. So the proposal includes a change to the site levels to allow for an angular step down, which would be overlapped by the central part 2-storey, part 3-storey element of the proposed building. This area is where the largest difference would be in respect to site levels, with a maximum increase of approximately 1.65 metres. However, given that this is mitigated for with the central block and the stepping down of the building and site level, this results in a building that is of a comparable height to surrounding properties, and then in this respect is considered to be acceptable. Moving on to considerations of local character, this slide provides images of surrounding buildings. So along Marston Road frontage, there is a mix of traditional dwellings, such as those on the top left image, with the rear elevations of late 20th century properties also forming part of the street scene. So that bottom photo is nearly directly opposite the entrance to the site. Immediately adjacent to the site is a recent development of contemporary dwellings, which is the top right image. Considering the other side of the application site, there is a variety of commercial buildings, with those shown being the Halfords Range building, which is to the south of the site and borders the site as well. And then the Sydenham's building is on the other side of the site. So given the local context and vernacular, it's considered the proposed use of a flat roof, multi-buff brick, buff stone, dark grey windows and doors is considered to be in keeping with the surrounding character and is therefore acceptable. Additionally, the street scene drawings indicate that the massing of the building would not be an over-dominant addition due to the frontages being of an appropriate size and scale with appropriate finishes. Moving on to considerations of neighbouring occupiers. So the closest edge, as shown on this plan, has no windows facing towards the neighbouring property, with a separation distance of approximately 24 metres from the closest side of the building to the nearest wall of the neighbouring property. Given the distances and the comparable height of the building, it's considered that the proposal would not have a significant detrimental impact in respect of overshadowing or overdominance. An overshadowing exercise has also been undertaken, which will be further detailed in subsequent slides. Concerns were raised regarding potential overlooking, and the scheme has been amended to remove windows from key parts of the building. If concerns remain, conditions can be used to ensure obscure glazing is provided where required. However, I would note that there is already proposed a condition to obscure some glazing and also prevent the insertion of windows on that wall as well. A landscape buffer is proposed along the boundaries shared with the residential properties, and a sensitive lighting strategy is also required for ecological reasons, which will have the additional benefit of protecting residential amenity. Following on from concerns raised regarding potential disturbance from noise, an acoustic fence is now proposed along the boundaries shared with the residential properties, and this is proposed to be secured by condition. A condition has also been proposed to require a privacy screen on the balcony as well. So, as previously mentioned, an overshadowing exercise has been undertaken, assessing the potential impacts on adjacent properties for 4 dates, so 21st of March, 21st of June, 21st of October and 21st of December, with all of these dates being depicted at 9 AM, 12 PM and 3 PM. The exercise indicates that for the March and June times, there is minimal change. For 3 PM in October and 12 PM and 3 PM in December, there is some additional overshadowing of the gardens of Springbourne House and number 35. However, this is limited to the external space that serves those properties rather than the properties themselves, and it's therefore considered that the scale of the impact is not significantly detrimental. So this is the overshadowing exercise carried out for the October date at 3 PM. This is the 21st December at 12 PM. Hoping that shows. Yeah, it does. And then this is at 3 PM on the 21st of December. Going to move on. Considering future occupiers, the proposed layout shows dementia-friendly circular routes and a courtyard area. Additionally, internal noise levels have been assessed and mitigation proposed in respect of specific sound insulation where required. The supporting information sets out that the proposal provides comparable amenity space to other care homes. It's also noted that the proposal has been designed to be fit for purpose and to allow for the care home to function to modern standards. Moving on to highways and active travel. So the Highways Authority have reviewed the proposal and have raised no objection. The proposed parking provision exceeds the requirements of the Somerset parking strategy, and the proposed access is considered to be of an acceptable standard. The application has been accompanied by a transport assessment, which includes information regarding proposed trip generation. This has been reviewed by the Highways Authority and it has not been objected to. Conditions have been recommended to ensure that the access and parking meets required standards and for a construction management plan. Further information had previously been requested in respect of the travel plan audit. Amended details have been received and accepted, and it has been recommended to secure the measures and safeguarding sum by Section 106 legal agreement. So moving on to ecology, the proposal's biodiversity net gain strategy includes both on-site units and the purchase of off-site credits, which can be secured by Section 106. SES have reviewed the proposal and have raised no objection, with conditions recommended to secure appropriate mitigation and enhancements, including a sensitive lighting plan, working method statement, compensation and enhancement measures as detailed in the reports to be secured, a KEMP, a LEMP, and a nesting bird sensitive construction method condition. Considering surface water management and flood risk, so initially the Lead Local Flood Authority objected to the proposal, requesting further technical information. This has been received and reviewed by the LLFA, resulting in the holding objection to be lifted. Conditions have been recommended to secure a sustainable surface water drainage scheme, a plan for future responsibility and management of the drainage system, and a method statement for interim and temporary drainage measures. Considering sustainability, a sustainability statement accompanies the application, detailing energy and water efficiency measures to be included, and this can be secured as appropriate. The proposal also includes the provision of EV charging spaces, and the application site is considered to be within walking and cycling distance of public transport connections and amenities as set out in the submitted travel plan. And then considering the proposed section 106, so there's sort of two main heads of terms. So this would be to secure the BNG measures and the implementation and monitoring of the travel plan with a fee of £2,000 and a safeguarding sum of £25,600. Therefore, the officer recommendation would be to support the proposal, given the principle of the development is considered to be compliant with relevant local and national policies, and there would not be a significant unacceptable adverse impact on visual amenity, residential amenity, ecology, surface water management and sustainability. Also, there are no objections from technical consultees. It's considered that appropriate mitigation measures could be conditioned and secured by Section 106 planning obligations, and that the benefit of the scheme, providing equivalent to 35 dwellings and specialist accommodation that is needed, outweighs the potential harms of the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed for the detailed presentation. We now go on to, excuse me, a number of speakers. Can I remind you all, you have 3 minutes, this will be timed, and that you really do need to keep to the 3 minutes. I need to be fairly firm as we have quite a long list here today. The first speaker this afternoon is Sophie Addison, and she'll be followed by Paul Johnson. Would you like to? Okay, your 3 minutes starts when you start.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to begin by expressing that I do not object to the principle of a care home on this site necessarily, but my concerns as a local resident are specifically related to the proposed design and the way that it has been presented. It is important to highlight that the developers have openly stated that this will be, and I quote, a private pay upmarket care home, very similar to others in Frome. There are already vacancies in these care homes, which indicates that whilst adult social care may say they need more spaces, I would question, do they need more spaces in an upmarket private pay care home? The officer's report suggests that the proposed care home is acceptable because of its maximum height being broadly comparable to the existing Huntsworth dwelling, and that this height aligns with the surrounding residential buildings. While this comparison may appear reasonable on paper, it fails to reflect the real living impact on my home and others. Huntsworth is a traditional pitched roof house, set well within its own plot, with generous separation from neighbouring boundaries. Its roof rises away from adjoining properties, and its position, scale and surrounding safe space soften its visual impact. In contrast, this care home is a large institutional building with a fundamentally different footprint and massing. It is not a single dwelling, but a 76-bedroom facility, and it is proposed to be situated immediately adjacent to neighbouring homes with very minimal separation. Even if the numerical ridge height is similar, this comparison is neither fair nor meaningful in my view. A tall element set back within its own plot is experienced for us very differently from a large, continuous block positioned close to our residential boundary. The sense of enclosure, dominance and overbearing impact cannot be ignored. Therefore, this is not just an issue of height and isolation, but of scale, massing, roof design and siting. Most importantly, it concerns how these factors will be experienced by neighbouring residents on a daily basis. When viewed from our homes and gardens, the proposed building would be far more intrusive than the existing Huntsworth dwelling. Another major concern is the reliance on tree screening to mitigate the visual impact of the development. And I would like to point out that all the photographs and drawings submitted to date were taken during the summer when the trees were in full leaf. We are now in winter and the visual impact will be very, very different. It's extremely frustrating that the developer promised Frome Town Council and residents that additional photographs and visual materials would be produced to show the true appearance of the care home, particularly in winter conditions. We were then subsequently informed via email from the developer that it was too expensive to move ahead and do these additional photographs. And I can only be left with the impression that the real issue here is not the cost, given the scale of this building and this
Start
proposal,
winding up, please.
but also the fact that other further pictures would demonstrate the true scale and impact of the building. I genuinely believe that there are some appropriate
Thank you.
amendments that can be made. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll now move on to Paul Johnson, and this will be followed by Jim Sanford.
Thank you. I live in Springbourne House. We object to this planning application in its current form for the avoidance of doubt, not because of NIMBYism. In fact, we do not object to the development of the site. We do not object to the development being a care home. What gives us great consternation, however, is the overwhelming scale of the plan, the mass, the height. It's totally unsympathetic and unnecessary close proximity to our property. This is an overbearing design and unquestionably has residential amenity concerns writ large all over it. In regard to privacy, our property is designed with all the main ground floor areas and 3 main bedrooms facing directly south-southwest. This development will dominate every view we have to the outside. But more concerning is how easily we should be viewed from the care home windows. And I'm really frustrated that none of the graphics showed the Marston Road elevation, the windows that people can stand in and look towards our property. That has been missed, and it's a shame. We are totally exposed, with every room being easily observed. This cannot be deemed reasonable in any circumstance. For those thinking that mitigation with screening might overcome some of these concerns, I comment as follows. Our garden borders Huntsworth, Greenacre and the main road. It is quite enclosed with boundary hedging and foliage between us and Huntsworth already being a height of just under 4 metres from our side. Since moving into the property, we have managed the boundaries with a view to opening up the garden to allow more light in. We and our Greenacre neighbours have taken trees down and kept the boundary height as low as reasonable. Marcus from Huntsworth has also very kindly maintained a reasonable height from his side, cutting down where appropriate. All this achieved its purpose. The absolute last thing we wish, therefore, now would be any further screening above the current height. This would just be rubbing salt in an already very sore wound. In regard to due cause of amenity, residential amenity, why am I not surprised that Frome Planning raised an objection and other professionals have raised objections to this application? They have visited our property, they have seen the concerns. So I ask you, please, please do not ignore these. They are really, really serious. So what is the way forward? How about re-evaluating the design? Reduce height to single story in key areas, specifically the length of the Marston Road elevation, and even more specifically, the extension wing that approaches our boundary. The relevant second floor resident rooms could surely be relocated to the southern area of the site, or does the development even need the number of rooms that are proposed? For all the above reasons, we ask you not to approve this application, but please reasonably consider there will be solutions here if the design is revisited. There is compromise, surely. And that's my main point. If I made one final point, which is addressed to Mr. Heath here, there are 2 silver birches in the northeast corner of Huntsworth, which we would very much like removed. This was requested when he visited us. I hope they can be taken down because that would offer some sort of appeasement.
Okay.
I don't think that's unreasonable.
Thank you very much indeed. We now move on to Jim Sanford, and this will be followed by Tessa Hampson. Jim unfortunately can't be with us this afternoon, and as chair, I've been asked to read his statement. These are his words. Apologies, I'm unable to attend the meeting in person. I would like to clarify some important site history, because without that context, it's difficult to properly judge the fairness and the consistency of the decision before you. The property known as Huntsworth is the site, but is site now proposed to be demolished to make way for a care home. The current occupiers of Huntsworth are the same residents who previously objected to a separate application at 37 Planetree House. That history is recorded in the in the council's own officer's report under the application 2018-1530. In that case, Huntsworth residents objected on the grounds of overlooking, proximity and a loss of amenity. These objections were accepted as valid by the planning officer, and as a result, the proposed 37 Planetree House was redesigned and relocated further away before permission was granted. It's important to note that even the original proposal for that single 4-bedroom house was set further from the boundary than the care home building is now proposed to our boundary. Crucially, the redesign was triggered by just one objection from the occupiers of Huntsworth. By contrast, the current proposal is for a large institutional care home with significant greater height, massing and intensity of use. It has attracted over 80 objections, many raising the same amenity concerns previously accepted as valid. Yet, despite this, only meaningful change made to the scheme has been the repositioning of a single window. Members are therefore faced with a clear question of consistency. Members should also be aware that Frome Town Council visited the site and the neighbouring properties, and the following visit unanimously objected to the proposal on amenity grounds. I want to be clear, the residents are not opposed to a care home in principle. What is objected to is this proposal in its current form. With good architecture, proper engagement and reasonable adjustment to layout and siting, many of these concerns could have been resolved. Unfortunately, the developer has shown little willingness to work constructively with the local community. In closing, I would ask members to reflect on whether, in light of the scale of the objection from local residents, Frome Town Council and Frome Civic Society, this proposal generally represents the best and the most appropriate design for a care home on this site. Or whether, given the opportunity for meaningful engagement with those affected, a more considered scheme could have been brought forward, one that delivers a care home while properly respecting residential amenity, scale and context. I respectfully ask the members to consider whether approving this proposal in its current form is the right decision. And that is Jim Sanford. Okay, we now move on to the next speaker, Tessa Hampton.
Thank you, and apologies for the late submission of information this morning. My name is Tessa Hampton of Context Planning, and I've been asked to speak on behalf of a number of concerned local residents. The application is located on protected employment. The committee report accepts the loss of safeguarded employment land largely on the basis the proposal would generate employment. However, both Amended Local Plan Part 2 and the Frome Neighbourhood Plan are clear that employment land is defined by the type of use, not employment generation. The preamble to policy BE1 of the Neighbourhood Plan makes clear that employment uses are B1, B2 and B8 uses. Local Plan Part 2 also defines employment land. The proposal does not fall within that definition. A care home is Class C2 residential institution. The policy distinction is deliberate as it relates to the employment type and compatibility and function of uses within employment areas, not simply the number of jobs created. In that context, the proposal represents non-employment use on safeguarded employment land and conflicts with policy BE1 and policy DP25. This position is accepted by the applicant in their own submission, which states, as the proposal would result in the introduction of a use, Class C2, which does not fall within the list of uses typically understood to be employment uses, it is necessary to provide justification for the proposed use. Secondly, the absence of identified need for this care home. Policy DP14 requires care homes to meet an identified local need. The Adult Social Services consultation confirms that existing care homes in Frome are operating at only 80 to 87% occupancy, meaning there's already some spare capacity. Since that response was issued, a current provider in Frome has confirmed a funded expansion from 60 to 120 beds, doubling capacity as an existing care home. The existing evidence indicates that existing and committed provision is sufficient to meet both current and future demand. Third, the impact on neighbouring residents are severe. A large part of the building would be located just 4.5 metres from the shared northern boundary, directly behind existing homes. This would have a substantial overbearing presence, significantly harming amenity. The development would include at least 14 windows directly facing those adjoining properties, and because of the close distances and number of windows, would result in significant loss of privacy. Frome Town Council visited the affected properties and agreed that the proposal would cause unacceptable harm, and this view has been shared by 3 local members. These are objective, informed assessments based on on-the-ground assessments. The residents have been willing to work with the applicant, but meaningful changes have not been made. The submitted photomontages are taken from locations that do not properly represent the experience of those neighbours. Despite requests, photomontages from viewpoints that would clearly show the true impacts on these properties have not been provided. Finally, parking. Only 29 parking spaces are proposed for a 76-bed care home. This does not adequately account for staff on overlapping shifts, visitors, medical professionals or service vehicles, and overspill parking into surrounding residential streets is inevitable. In conclusion, the proposal results in the loss of safeguarded employment land for non-employment use, fails to demonstrate an identified local need, causes significant harm to residential amenity, and provides insufficient parking. For those reasons, it conflicts with the development plan and should be refused. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. We'll now move on to Nicola Griffiths, followed by Marilyn Sims. So Nicola Griffiths, this, I believe she's replacing Kirsty Dogsall. You have 3 minutes from when you start speaking.
Chair, councillors, thank you for letting me speak. I'm here today because I share all the concerns you've already heard from neighbours, residents and planning professionals. The scale of this building, the impact on neighbouring homes, residential immunity, the pressure on traffic and access, the fact that over 100 people have taken their problem to a jet sends a strong message about the strength of local feeling. But I'd like to ask you to consider something even more fundamental. As locals and councillors, what do we want Frome to be known for in the provision of care for our loved ones? Do we want an industrial style warehouse, institutional care home where we simply cram in as many people as possible? I spend a lot of time in care homes and I see what works, what doesn't. And this design in its current form raises serious concerns. I have 5 points. First, this proposal is too large and appears designed to cram in as many bedrooms as possible instead of prioritising a calm, livable environment. The result is a layout that feels institutional rather than homely. Second, the design relies on long corridors and long travel distances. For frail residents and those with limited mobility, long distances increase confusion and fatigue and increases the risk of falls. This is not a small issue, it's a daily safety risk. Third, from an infection control perspective, we learn painful lessons from COVID. Large continuous units allow infection to spread fast. Better care design uses smaller clustered living units, often around 8 to 10 rooms, so outbreaks can be contained and residents protected. Developers don't like this, it may cost a little more. To cram as many older people as possible in to make the owners the most money. Fourth, the balconies raise a significant safety concern, particularly for residents living with dementia. We should be extremely cautious about proving designs that have so many balconies. Members will recall that Adult Social Services in this consultation on the 17th of October 2025 raised the same concern with no reply from the applicant. Fifth, so what's the consequence of these problems with the size, the design and the infection control? Well, primarily impacts the daily quality of life of older people in there. Is this what we really want people of Frome? Also, the councils will be particularly wary of this. The cost burden will impact the local authority and taxpayers because residents will need to use the GP more, also frequent more visits to hospitals, and will need more staff to support them, the cost of which the operators of the home will ultimately try and charge social services and the NHS. So my ask is simple. Let's all use the technical planning reasons that we've heard and oppose this scheme. We will do with a clear conscience that we will actually be doing the people through a favour by preventing the development of an industrial warehouse factory for our much loved parents and grandparents.
Thank you. Right, we then move now on to Marilyn Sims, and she will be followed by Benedict Wills. Marilyn. Thank you, William.
Good afternoon, members of the Planning Committee. I've lived in Frome for 53 years. It's a great town where I've enjoyed many happy years, but I am concerned about what the future holds. If I need care, will I be able to stay in the town I built my life in? I will need to be close to my children, grandchildren and friends, but that can only happen if we have enough care homes with enough space for me. This site looks ideal to me. It's in a good place, easy to get to for both staff and visiting family members. It's on a bus route with an existing stop nearby. I've read complaints about traffic and parking. The plans have more than adequate parking. I don't see that there will be parking on residential roads, and I haven't noticed that other care homes in Frome, like Rossetti House or Critchhill Court, create traffic chaos for their neighbourhoods. A care home gives a much lower impact to the immediate area. With the large businesses nearby, I would think that if this were to be a big supermarket, like Aldi, Lidl, a warehouse, an industrial unit or a housing estate, that it would create much more traffic. It's a well-designed building. It's 2 stories. The neighbouring houses are 2 stories. I don't understand why people against this new care home say it's too big. It is a good distance from nearby houses. The existing fence and high, dense evergreen hedgerows between them will give privacy to both sides. There are proposed garden areas between the building and the neighbour's boundary. Having lived in the town for most of my life, I know that Rossetti House is taller than this one, and looking at the plans, I think it's closer to the houses around it than this one is. With the new housing that has been built and is further proposed, we are growing as a town. We have more older people, and those older people will need care. If we ignore this opportunity for a good development, the price we pay is that people who have loved living in Frome will spend their later years in exile, far from their loved ones and anything that feels like home. I don't want that for me or for anyone else. It's a well-designed, in-scale building, a sensible use of land in a suitable location, and will strengthen the community's social infrastructure. So please support the proposals and vote to help families keep their loved ones close. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. We now have Benedict Wills, followed by Tia Roach.
Good afternoon, councillors, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm speaking in support of the proposed new care home. Me and my wife moved to Frome just over 25 years ago, and we raised our family there. Frome is a very desirable place to live, and since we've moved there, the town's population has substantially increased, and it continues to grow, with new homes and estates being built across the town and with more developments in the pipeline. Because of this rapid growth, Frome is constantly in need of new amenities and facilities, and something that this new care home represents. I currently live very close to a care home, Rowden House, and have done for the last 5 years. As you look across from our back door and garden, you can clearly see into the grounds and buildings of Rowden House and vice versa. But we have never experienced any intrusion on our privacy. We have never experienced any noise pollution. We have never experienced any light pollution. We have no problems with the traffic either. Like the site under discussion, the entrance to Rowden House leads onto the main road to Radstock, a busy road as you can imagine. But the care home does not cause any congestion or disruption. Living next to Rowden House has had no impact on our quality of life, and I believe this new care home will have the same negligible impact. Ageing is not a choice, but an inevitable part of life. But what is a choice is whether we enable people to remain close to their families and communities as they grow older. My mother spent her final years in local care, and I will always be grateful that we were able to visit her frequently and be with her during that time. Approving this care home will help ensure that families can stay connected and that residents can remain part of the community they call home. Thank you.
Thank you. We now move on to Tia Roach, and that will be followed by Councillor Tanner.
Good afternoon. My name's Tia Roach, and I would like to express my support for the proposed new care home on Marston Road in Frome. I'm a mental health nurse that works for the NHS, therefore I am painfully aware of the critical shortage of care beds for our vulnerable and elderly patients. We are struggling with major shortages of inpatient beds in hospitals that are unfortunately being taken up by mostly elderly patients that are not necessarily safe to be sent home, but also do not require inpatient or medical care. We plead that the Council supports the NHS by creating safe spaces for these patients. This crisis will not change without us working together. This does not only impact patients, but our friends and families, nurses, social workers, carers, and all other healthcare professionals. Anyone can find themselves in this situation in the blink of an eye and quickly see the bed crisis for themselves. Not only have I witnessed these pressures from my nursing, I have also experienced it personally. My grandpa, who is my entire world, has to live in a care home in Langport due to the lack of resources locally. We searched for weeks for local care homes to provide my grandpa with the care he needs. There was nothing. Everywhere was understaffed and overworked and unable to take him. This has resulted in massive strain on our entire family. What should be regular visits filled with comfort and familiarity have become difficult, infrequent, and ultimately devastating. Dementia patients require certain comforts. They need routine and regular family time to maintain dignity, stability, and emotional well-being. Just because someone has dementia, it doesn't mean they don't miss their homes, the place they grew up, started a family, and watched them grow up. For these people, like my grandpa, to have to leave Frome for his final moments, it's devastating. There are so many families in Frome facing similar challenges. This will not get better without change. The lack of local provision for elderly and vulnerable residents is a growing problem that will only get worse as our population ages. A new care home in Frome would mean families like mine get to keep their loved ones close, stay actively involved in their care, and allow residents to stay rooted in the town they have always called home. As someone who has lived in number 16 at Cabell Court, opposite the site, I can confirm that myself and none of our immediate neighbours have any issues with the proposed site. For these reasons, please support the proposal. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. We now have Councillor Tanner, and we'll be followed by Joanna, and forgive my pronunciation, Abgafilatsu.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you to the planning officer for a very detailed report. We don't have any objection to the provision of a care home. In fact, we welcome the development providing much needed facilities and employment for the town. We also appreciate the applicants and agents attending our meetings and engaging with some discussions with the residents. We had many meetings with both the Lower Parana residents who joined in this application. We're invited to the homes, as has been said, affected by the amendments, and this enabled us to see for ourselves the potential impact this proposal would have. Our objection to the application was mainly concerned with the impact on amenity to the neighbouring properties. We felt the northeast elevation in particular was too close to the boundary, particularly where the proposed building protrudes. It would be overbearing at this point. We felt there would be overlooking from the windows and potential for nighttime spill. The adjoining residents confirmed there was an opportunity to make adjustments to design that residents would support, and we offered to facilitate further discussions. The plans were amended in response to objections received, relocating a window and adding some screening to another window, And we also understand other alterations of this window has been conditioned by the planning officer, which we welcome. However, we did not feel that the amendments were sufficient to deal with the impacts on the amenity of the adjoining neighbours. The overbearing impact on the neighbouring amenity will be due to the height of the wall and the proximity to the boundary. We appreciate the existing building is of a similar height, but it's set back a lot further from the wall that will be there. And it's also got a sloping roof. From the neighbour's home and garden, this will be imposing at all times. And due to its proximity, we cannot see how this can be alleviated with screening to the boundary wall. Therefore, whilst the application may be policy compliant, in our opinion, it have a detrimental impact to the adjoining properties. However, we do feel that with relatively minor alteration to the design and layout, there is a possible solution that could work for everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Tanner. We then move on to the final speaker on this application, and that is the agent, Joanna Gabrielazou.
Good afternoon. I'm Joanna Gabrielazou of JLL, planning consultant to the applicant Liberty Care. We welcome your officer's recommendation for this vitally important proposal. There's critical need for new care beds in Frome and across Somerset. Our elderly population is growing, with Somerset's rate above the national average. 20% of Frome's current care homes lack en-suites or wet rooms within bedrooms, meaning residents have to share facilities. Rossetti House is Frome's last purpose-built care home, which was opened in 2012, with all other homes in the 80s and 90s. Hence, your social care department expressly confirms the need for care home beds in Frome. GP and primary care reliance is reduced when residents move into care homes, with common incidents like trips and falls and medication management mistakes significantly reduced. No principal, design or technical concerns have been raised by your officers or statutory consultees. Enavo is a care operator and has been involved in the design and layout throughout to ensure the home reflects current best practice, so that form follows function, just as a hospital design would be approached. The number of rooms is critical to the wings of the care home. The architect has designed over 100 specialist care homes. That is their day job. The site has been allocated for employment use for over 23 years and no development going forward. The Mendip local plan does not prevent care home use, with policy DP25 including provision for alternative employment uses. The Frome Neighbourhood Plans Policy BE1 directs redevelopment of employment sites to traditional uses, but this greenfield site has not been developed, meaning it is not redevelopment as prescribed by policy. We are delivering construction jobs and 75 permanent jobs. Care homes are commonly located next to traditional housing. They are indeed a form of housing themselves. They are typically quiet uses, with residents spending limited time outdoors due to frailty, and industrial developments would likely generate more noise and disruption. The proposed building is 2-storey at domestic height, bar the middle joining section. We have enhanced landscaping to the boundary, introduced acoustic fencing, and removed windows to the closest elevation to overcome amenity concerns and overlooking. By comparison, the council approved Rossetti House, which is 3 storeys and much closer to houses, and the new Keeford Meadows development, with houses at 21 metres apart, including a 3-storey block. Our scheme provides a minimum 23.7 metre distance to the houses, so is wholly acceptable. To conclude, approval is critical. The council can only meet 2.84 years of its housing supply. With growing demand, there is an acute need for at least 2 care homes in Frome. Apologies, I'm almost finished. Supporting this proposal ensures residents are not forced into care homes outside of the town. The proposal meets the development plan objectives as a whole and NPPF objectives to deliver much needed sustainable housing while creating 75 jobs on a vacant development site of 23 years. We welcome your approval and thank you for listening.
Thank you. Right, I don't know if the officers want to make any comment before we go on for discussion. Is that a point of order?
It's a point of order. We've had the very long presentations. It's now 3:10, and I'm not sure that I can make it through to 4:10 without a comfort break. And I'd really like to be able to vote on this.
Okay, well, there needs to be some rules around a comfort break mid.
I appreciate
session.
it. Yeah.
I don't know whether the legal officer wants to make any comment on that.
No comment, but the adjournment must be for a specific purpose, in this case to allow a comfort or a movement break for those.
Yeah.
And we have to have a start time,
Okay.
a return time, and only those members who return after the comfort break. So they've been here now and they return after.
Yeah.
Anybody else, and they don't return, or they return subsequently during the debate, can't vote.
Thank you. I think we're all aware of that. Yes.
Thank you. I was just going to say, as a point of order for the public, so the public are aware, during any comfort break, members aren't allowed to engage with the wider public. The public have had the chance to speak publicly on the application. This is just a respite for members to grab 5 minutes to the toilet, yourselves as well, if you wish. But the councillors can't be engaging with members of the public during the breaks. Thank you.
Okay, I'll take this to a formal vote. It is, if we say 25 past, to make sure everybody is back in place. Are people content to have a formal comfort break at this stage? Can I have a show of hands, please? Yeah. Okay. I think on that basis, thank you. Right. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Can we call the meeting back to order? Helen, do you want to kick it off again? We have everyone back in the room, as far as I can see. Thank you, and welcome back to people online. We got to the end of the 10 speakers on this application, and I'm going to ask the officer for any clarification, factual clarification or information before we open it up to members.
Thank you. So I was just going to come with a few points clarification. The main concerns that we heard from the speakers was about residential community size, scale and massing the development and the proximity to the boundary. So in terms of the layout, members can see there is a bit that projects sort of close-ish to the boundary to the front as a wing. The rest of it is then more centralised and projects to the back. So looking at the bit that pokes out absolute closest to the boundary, in paragraph 12.3 of the committee report, it does set up separation distances. So the bit absolute closest to the boundary is 4.4 metres from the boundary, which for visuals for members is approximately from this wall over here to about the edge there. So that's the separation from the boundary. In terms of the separation of that from the back of the nearest residential house, the distance of that is 23.7 metres. So for information again for members in this room, that wall to this wall over here is 12.4 metres. So you're looking at almost double that for the separation in terms of window to window. On this elevation, there aren't any windows on that closest bit. So on the top image, the thin section that you can see on the top image, is the nearest section to the boundary. There are no windows on that bit. On the bit just forward of it where you can see a window, that's on one of the step-ins. So the position of that relative to the boundary is 6.3 metres, and that's controlled by condition to be obscure glazed, so not allow any direct views through. And there is a condition to restrict any additional openings on that bit of the building. On the rest of the building, so the separation distance from that elevation where the obscure glazed window is is 25.9 metres to the rear elevation of the neighbouring dwelling. So that just gives members an idea in terms of the separation distances. I think the other point was raised in terms of employment. You've heard both sides in terms of it is an allocated employment site. It hasn't come through for an employment use. A B1, B2 or B8 use relative to neighbouring residential properties wouldn't be something that would be ideal for those properties. So we'd have to assess any application on its own merit. A care home does offer a degree of employment in terms of its use. And from an officer perspective, we are more comfortable with that as a kind of hybrid employment use relative to the neighbouring properties, relative to the commercial use next door. And I think the other thing we were just going to cover was internal layout, because there was some discussions about how big and how long some of the corridors were. It's just loading, bear with. This is one section of the building. So the linear bit going out is the bit that's closest to the neighbouring properties. Then it comes in, then it goes down, then it goes out again for that wing. That bit that comes down in the middle, that's where the main entrance is. That's where the transition is for sort of almost the 3-storey element because of the way the land levels dip down. In each of the sections, so on each floor, they're divided out into these block areas. Each of the block areas have separate amenity spaces, separate quiet rooms, separate nursing stations. All of the rooms have en suites. And the pink bit that's closest to where the obscure glazed window was, that's a staircase. The staircase there in the centre of the building and towards the back of the building as well, but it's effectively ranged as a block per floor. So there's a block like that on that floor, there's a block like that on the floor above, and there's a block like that on the lower ground floor to the back, and the block like that on the ground floor. So on the floor plans, hopefully that makes sense to members in terms of how they've staggered the design. And I was just going to say the case officer also has visited all of the neighbouring properties as part of the assessment process. So some of the photos you would have seen in the presentation were from the neighbouring properties and through their windows.
Thank you. Any further comments? No? Right, it's an opportunity now for members to ask questions of the officers on this application. And I will kick one off, and that is to say, could someone talk about the viability study done on this? As with any application, viability is something which is considered. And as a Somerset councillor, I'm very aware of the viability of social care in Somerset. So I'd really like to have some feedback on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So during the determination of the application, obviously I've had a lot of discussions with the applicant team. My understanding is that this number of bedrooms is required in order to make the scheme viable. The building has been designed as a whole, so it's how it flows as an entirety rather than, you know, just having little bits here and there. I didn't know if you wanted to add anything to that. No, hopefully that's answered your question.
Thank you for that. So can I just, in essence, say that the applicant recognises the need for a certain number of beds to make the scheme viable, and the viability has been assessed by planning as such, or you've just had a conversation? Has there been a formal viability study?
No, there hasn't, but there isn't a requirement for such in policy, but we've just had a discussion about it, yeah.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. Councillor Dimery.
Thank you, Chair. Just an open question, really. We can't refuse applications for businesses on over provision. For example, if we're a chip shop. Can we refuse a care home on the basis of over provision? I have another question.
So I think you would need to have evidence or demonstrate that there is no provision, bearing in mind we've got adult social services saying that there is a need. The policy relating to care homes does talk about there should be an identified need, and by consulting social services they confirm that there is. Dawn?
Yeah, I was just going to say, in terms of, it's similar to housing in that we should be showing projection of meeting our future demand for it. So in terms of, whilst it's noted there's some availability within the surrounding care homes, as discussed by one of the speakers, a lot of those care homes are quite dated. In terms of our projected 5-year need, the appropriate consultees have said there is a need for this care home. So as lead officer, I'd be strongly advising you not to do that unless there's some evidence that can otherwise be presented that there isn't the need that we've got sort of requested by the consultees.
Thank you. That's fine. Does it, if we grant permission, this is strictly for a care home, not for retirement homes? Is that correct?
Yes. So it's a different use class. So a care home is use class C2, whereas like retirement homes would be C3.
Thank you. Just one I'd like to make that about 18 months ago in my ward, a care home was threatened with closure, and the authority was not able to come in and buy it or run it as is used to be the case. And I asked the question, where will the residents go? Would they all be accommodated in Frome? And the answer was there were some spare beds, but they could be accommodated up to 30 miles away. I was appalled that the idea of somebody with dementia or any other life-threatening illness might be moved from Frome to Chard away from their family. I do think the matter of provision is very important, and in a sense, I don't think it's a part of this argument. I think the argument probably is based around the design of the building and the type of building we're looking at and the impact that will have in the neighbourhood. And with that, I'll stand down.
Thank you. Any other questions of the officers at this stage? Councillor Clark?
Thank you, Chair. I was waiting for the other Frome councillors if they wanted to go in first, but I just wanted to make some points. We've managed to convince ourselves, apparently, that this is employment, when in fact it is not employment. The land is scheduled for employment, and we've convinced ourselves that a care home with not employment is employment. So I don't quite know how we managed to do those acrobatics. We've done them. It's a bit disingenuous as well to say that the building is no taller than the house which is going to be knocked down. It totally ignores the perspective of the neighbours who have to look at it. And the closer they are to it, the taller it will appear. And it may only be, it is a truth, it's only as tall as the existing building that's coming down, but it's in your face when it's right next to your boundary. Never mind about separation distances and trees and this sort. The view is horrendous from those properties. So I don't think that's a very convincing argument, and it should be a lot lower than the house which is coming down. And the overbearing design could be ameliorated by that externally. The residents and lots of other people have said we're not NIMBYs. We don't mind having the care home there, but it has to be a different looking care home. And if we take some of these tall 2-storey buildings away and turn them into single-storey, particularly the half which is nearest to Marston Road, because one day we know very well there are going to be solar panels on the roof. So that's another 2 meters on top of what these people have to look at. And it will become quite overbearing. And internally, I know it's probably not the question for the planning officers. There is a consultant's report that I've read, but I'm not sure if it's come to committee, actually criticising the internal design and the effect it will have on the well-being of the people who are going to go in there. This is just a hotel with another name. It's like a factory for processing ill people, and it's a horrendous concept. It's awful, and it could be done a lot better inside the actual layout. I'm surprised that Adult Social Services have not raised this point during the conversations with the planners, because NHS have said there's no need for this. There is capacity in Frome. And then we find other people that say there isn't capacity in Frome. But they can't both be correct, can they? I would have thought we would have taken the lead from NHS on this. I think, just to sum up, the residents are not against this. They're quite happy to have the care home, but it's going to have to be a different looking care home for it to get their approval. Thank you, Chairman. I just reserve the right in case I think of something else later on. Thank you.
Thank you. Could the planning officer clarify, has the NHS indicated or not that there is a need for a care home? Just because Barry feels there's been 2 messages from the NHS, so could we have clarity?
Yeah, sure. So NHS has said, sorry, just trying to find it again, that there is already a sufficient care home capacity within the area, then this could lead to an increase in patients. So they haven't, I'm trying to, I've quoted them verbatim within my report. I'm just having a quick read. Fine, if I just try and buy Millie a little bit of breathing room while she does that, the difference between the NHS comment and the council comment in terms of social services is NHS will be looking at a fixed moment in time, aka today. But as a council, we have a requirement to provide 5 years in advance supply of accommodation. So whether there is enough supply today versus whether there's going to be enough supply in 5 years' time when we've got additional housing, additional families, additional dependents, that's a question. But that's why there may be a difference between the NHS comment and the social services comment. I'll just bounce back to Millie. Yep, so they don't say in their comment that there is capacity. The other thing I would probably mention on capacity is that no care home would ever be at 100%, full. There's operational requirements while you need a bit of a headroom. So you wouldn't be looking at having 100% of your rooms filled because it's not how the business operates.
I know the NHS have always worked on anything under 95% is marvellous, and they get to 110%. So that's another story. Shall we go back to who? Sorry. Oh, sorry. Councillor Lovell.
Related question. Thank you, Chair. I've had a bit of pushback about suggestions that the inside design is cramped for the purpose. Could we have some clarification as to the nature of the design, the size of the rooms, the aerated element of aeration within the space, and how that compares with other homes? Thank you.
Thank you. So, as probably mentioned by the agent in their 3 minutes, this has been designed by a team who design care homes. So it has been designed with the end user in mind. I understand there's a lot of standards and rules that have to be met in order for a care home to be considered acceptable. In terms of like the size of the actual bedrooms, they've got the ensuite facilities, also access to a range of other facilities within the building. So it's, there's options to move around the building as well as outside in the courtyard area. Did you have anything from?
I was just going to say, in terms of the room layouts per wing is set out within the report in terms of all the different uses that are available. As mentioned earlier, it's per block. So that L shape on one floor has all the facilities for that floor. The purple section in the middle is main entrance with some ancillary uses. That L-shaped block at the back is another set of self-contained units and dwellings. They've all got en suites. Both the front and the rear blocks at first floor respectively, even though one's at first floor from the front and one's at effectively ground floor if you're running a straight line through, have modest balcony areas. There was concern from the neighbours about the balcony area on the front. So its position is quite significantly further back from the boundary than the projecting element, but a privacy screen was still agreed to go on there to ensure the neighbours that there'd be no direct overlooking from that balcony area. And if you can just go to the layout again quickly, there is also quite a lot of description within the report about the amenity areas and the garden areas and the paths and the different breakout garden spaces for them. And because of concerns about then disruption on the neighbours in terms of use of those outdoor spaces. There's also a plan provided that gives a section through that element of the site with a noise attenuation fence. So to try and minimise any disruption for the neighbours for any use of the kitchen gardens or sort of the private quiet spaces. But there are a number of sort of informal routes around the building that could be taken as a bit of fresh air, but a nice circular route to sort of aid dementia patients. But yeah, the description of that and the description of all the facilities per block is within the contents of the report. If members have any particular questions, we're happy to take them.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Simon and then Councillor Collins.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of comments, really. I can see from the plans that most of the rooms have, well, the rooms have ensuite facilities. And it just raises the question of people saying it's a bit cramped or looks a bit not suitable, that many care homes that were built in earlier years would not meet the present standards that this care home has to adhere to. And in fact, many care homes cannot afford the cost of updating and are therefore closed because of that. I'd reiterate the 87% occupancy. I think you're never going to get 100% because there is always going to be a turnover. There's always going to be reasons for vacancies. And finally, I'd just like to say it's a commercial decision to build the care home, and I don't think the company would be building a care home if there was no demand. Maybe not now, but certainly within the next few years. Thank you.
Thank you. Ewan? Councillor Cameron?
Thank you, Chair. If you forgive me, I did meet with a dementia care group last week in Glastonbury, and one of the members of the public very kindly mentioned how her Gramps was miles away. That was definitely the message that came over within the care group carers meeting. With regard to the 87%, I agree with my learned councillor to the right. Having come from the NHS and been a director from the NHS, 87% is a very high level. With regard to whether the building conforms to regulations, I'd just like to say the Care Quality Commission has very strict guidelines with regard to the design of dementia care homes, and I'm certain if the planning officers, we were to ask them whether it does conform to those regulations, and I'll just mention a couple. Building Regulation Mike, the Health Building Notes, Health Technical Memoranda, and the Equality Act 2010 are a few of those regulations that they have to conform to. So I'm certain that they did what they would have, otherwise they wouldn't have submitted the plan. And I just wonder whether the officers can confirm that those regulations have been complied with.
Thank you. In terms of timing of compliance, the Equality Act is to mainly ensure that you're looking after anyone with protected interests. Obviously, future occupants of the building would have protected characteristics. So as part of the nature of running the business, it would be for the care home to ensure that they're compliant with that. There is nothing in the layout or the design that would suggest there's going to be a conflict with that. In terms of building regs, they get complied with as and when the building gets built. So at the moment, we can't say, yes, it complies with that, but it will do through the construction process because that's what they have to do. And that was one of the reasons why you heard from the agent. The designer for this building is someone who, as their day job, delivers this type of building, because keeping on top of the regulations and ensuring appropriate design moving forward is obviously quite important for the end provider.
Thank you. Councillor Sully.
Thank you, Chair. I'm concerned about why the care home wants to go there when it's designated. It was in the local plan and the neighbourhood plan for being for employment. Where is this? Are we saying that Frome isn't likely to attract inward investment? And maybe a company that will employ, will skill up, maybe different age groups, maybe young people, maybe retrain, Are we going to set a precedent here that other areas in Somerset that are designated for employment could have a change of use? Obviously, a care home will employ people, but it's different. It's a different entity. So that's my concern, that we're easily giving up this area that should be attracting inward investment in a very desirable part of Somerset, I think, and also Somerset itself is attractive to inward investment, and we would be closing the door. Just seems an odd choice. Why there?
Thank you. So on the plan behind you, so the big black line on the plan behind you, that's all of the employment land. So as you can see, the employment land was quite a large area, and did include the area sort of to the back and the side of this plot. So the range is just to the south of where the red plot is. So the red plot's the application site. And within the black line and to the northeast, there's a building yards merchant. So there are already quite a lot of employment uses within the allocated employment land. I think the intention when it was originally allocated was that any employment uses would be accessed off of that highway that serves the rest of the commercial complex. Independent of planning, but there is a strip of land between the end of this site and that highway, which means you cannot actually connect to that highway anyway at the moment. So there's a ransom strip preventing access, and notwithstanding that, on the existing plot at the moment is quite a large detached residential property, and it is next to a number of residential properties that have been constructed after the original employment land has been built out. If we were to go, actually it is part of the employment site, we should be reserving it for employment. What people normally have to do is demonstrate that it's not needed or required for any employment uses. As you heard from the agent, it's been vacant for 23 years. So it's not been taken up for employment in that time. And given there's an established residential use on the property, introducing a B1, B2 or B8 employment use would raise its own concerns in terms of the impact on the neighbouring residents. A nursing home doesn't comply with the B1, B2 or B8 uses, but it provides a residentially compatible use that does offer employment. So officers are satisfied that on that balance, this is probably the most appropriate use of the site, rather than pushing back on the B1, B2, B8 use. And in terms of why here, if we can do the previous slide as well. So that's the settlement limits for the area. And there's a sort of bluish pin, quite a small one, just halfway down the main road, that's it. So within the policies that do support care homes, it encourages them to be in sustainable locations within one of the main areas for growth. So this, Frome is a sustainable settlement. It's well connected within the settlement. So therefore, on that principal basis, the location was considered to be acceptable for the care home.
Thank you. I've got two more speakers, and then I would like to add something to three more speakers. So we move to Councillor Collins, followed by Councillor Clark, and then followed by Councillor Denton.
Thank you. First point on overbearing on number 35 and the house on the corner, which was shown, I think, in slide number 23. I understand that at the Frome Town Council meeting, the applicants were going to provide mock-up photographs of what the view would look like with the, was it number 23, I think, just to the right of that. But they haven't come about, and I do take the points that, yes, the view, if it's going to be about to the height of the bottom of the chimneys and it's going to be long, it's quite a different view from that, adding to which the tree on the left is obviously going to have no leaves in winter. So yeah, I think it's made it a lot more complicated without a proper mock-up of what it looks like from there. My second point really is on the need, because as I understand it, DP 14 states that care home proposals must meet an identified local need, and I'm very muddled. You say in your report on page 9, at adult social care says there's a need for beds. Well, to quote, it says the data suggests the addition will help meet rising demand from an ageing population, but local consultation is necessary to ensure it benefits the community. So I'm not clear if that local consultation has been done. I do note the report from RAP, who are healthcare providers, quite a detailed report looking at the other care homes in Frome, and showing their level of capacity, which sort of ranges from 77% to 87%, depending upon which one. But they do note that the Frome Care Village is undergoing a £10 million refurbishment with an extra 60 beds. Also noted in the planning response on the 8th and August 25 from Andre Sestini, there is no up-to-date needs older persons evidence for Somerset East. A new Somerset-wide study needs including other older persons accommodation has been commissioned but not yet finalised. Yeah, I'm just not convinced of the need for this. If we've got Frome Care Village putting in another 60 beds, if we're on between 77 and 87% capacity at the moment, I'm not quite that there is a need, and if there isn't necessarily a need, that seems to predicate the change in planning use. Clear those up. If there has been more local consultation as requested by Adult Social Services, or whether the RAP affinity report does provide that local consultation.
Any further comments on need? We've already addressed it more than once.
Yeah, just thought I'll cover for your microphone. So yes, that photo is taken from that property by the yellow star. Just to flag, that is from a first floor window. And also, whilst we have to consider, potential for over dominance and overlooking, views or right to a view aren't a planning consideration. In terms of the need and the comments from Adult Social Services, so whilst they talk about local consultation, they do also say that Frome has a higher than national average of people aged over 65, and that is increasing. They also state there are currently no empty care homes or sites which could be identified as an alternative option. So whilst one of the existing care homes is possibly expanding, the population or the persons in the area who are over 65 is also expanding. So in terms of need, as Councillor White just said, I feel like we have covered off that point. And then just quickly about the comment from planning policy, that would be referring to the evidence for the local plan. So the new Somerset local plan is currently emerging. They will be carrying out, new evidence studies for that. So he's simply referring to information into planning policies in the local plan. He isn't referring to statistics that Adult Social Services may have. Hopefully that's cleared everything up.
Thank you. Councillor Clark and then Councillor Denton.
Thank you, Chair. This land is currently designated for employment, and planning is about looking to the future. In a minute, we're going to get 1,700 houses half a mile away from this site. Shouldn't we be thinking more about planning for the future, making sure these people have got jobs in the area rather than having to go to Bristol and Bath? I think it's a retrograde step to change its designation at this point. I mean, if they want to come back in a year's time because the houses at Selwood Garden Village have fallen through, might be a different argument. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Denton.
Thank you. So I live next to a care home
goodness me. Okay, so I live next to a care home, which is about 20 meters away from our back garden, actually closer than that. Oh, this is comfortable. And it is, thankfully, we have a hedge which is 3 meters, well, 3 stories high, which was planted in 1984. So we don't have concern because we've got this evergreen hedge. Now, the other side of the garden is we can see into their windows, and they could see into ours. And in winter, that makes it more obvious because obviously the lights are on and there's no trees, there's no leaves on the trees. So we do have a problem with that, and I can totally understand where the residents are coming from because it is a real concern. Said that, no consolation really, but having said that, we've got used to the house, the building being there because it's been there now for over 15, 20 years, well, about 17 years. So it's a real concern. I also often look at things when people say, why are we making provision? Why are we waiting until we have an emergency? It's a bit like the highways, why don't we put the stop street in there before people die? And I think it's the same here. We've got a higher than average population in Frome. And I think the care homes have to stay, they have to have empty beds for respite. They have to have empty beds for emergencies. And the council will buy those in if they need to. And problem is that it will be an expense for us anyway in the future. And we know that that's a big expense on the council. I think we're also stuck where we've got this no technical, all the technical consultees have not had an objection. And I think that's something we have to think about because if this goes to appeal, it's the technical consultees that will tip that over and make that decision for us. So I think it's a difficult one. We know we want to have the care. As Martin said, people have to be taken far away from their families and friends when they do age, and I'll be one of those. And, I don't want to have to be shipped out. I'll come visit Martin in charge when he's down there. But yeah, on a serious note, I just think it's a difficult one because we're trying to prepare for the future. We do have an aging population. We have Selwood Garden Community. We've got other developments coming in, but I also understand what the residents are coming from. And also there's a wall without windows. And actually that's a really good thing in a way because when you've got the windows and you've got dementia patients, we've had that. It's very distressing when we're sitting in our garden and the windows are open and people are distressed. We couldn't use our garden for 2 years because of that. So that's a really, really good reason to not have windows on a wall that faces on people's homes. So those are just some points I wanted to raise. Thank you.
Thank you. One thing I would say just in terms of the 75 full-time equivalent jobs, I have in my ward a number of nursing homes, care homes, and they do provide an awful lot of local employment for individuals. And it's jolly hard work. It's a genuine job. It's not something you can underestimate. To dismiss 75 full-time equivalent care jobs, I think a little unfair. It is employment. It's quite important. It's local. It's actually quite effective in supporting many people. And they use the word full-time equivalent because many people work part-time and they can fit it around children care, adult care or whatever. So please don't underestimate that 75 full-time jobs is a significant employment contribution to Frome. And while I totally understand Claire's ambition to attract high-grade jobs into the community, this investment of this home is actually inward investment into Somerset. I don't know who's doing it, and it's not really appropriate, but we shouldn't underestimate that every time we see a development like this, somebody is committing quite considerable amounts of money into the town of Frome. And so while I appreciate it, it's not the high-tech jobs which we would all love to see on occasions. It is part of the range.
Helen Kate.
I'm sorry? Okay, so yeah, it is part of the range of employment opportunities to the town. Right, unless there's Anything else? I would like to take this to a vote. So could I have a proposal? Sorry, Martin, you want to come back briefly?
May I just, I think there's a couple of issues that weren't, I don't think have been addressed. Councillor Tanner from Frome Town Council asked a specific question about the northeast corner of the wall, and I'm not sure that we've had an answer. The northeast wall on that, and there are one or two other technicalities that I'd like to be reminded of, or at least see addressed. One is the number of, still not sure how many windows have been masked off from overlooking the neighbouring property. Answers to those two questions, please.
Thank you. So the first bit was looking at the bit closest to the neighbouring property. So at the top side, it's the darker shaded area. Can you just go back to the site location plan really quickly?
Yeah.
Because it's a stepped design. So can you see there's a bit that's stepped in, then it steps out, and then there's a bit closest to the boundary there. So if we can go back to the elevation. So the bit that's stepped in first is that section. So that section is stepped in. At ground floor, it's already screened by the evergreen hedge. So there is an evergreen hedge that's at first, like ground floor level. It hasn't grown to second floor level yet, but it is there. It's an evergreen hedge. The top window is the window that was causing concern. That's got a condition on it. And there is a condition that no windows will be going into that bit of that elevation. So that top window is obscure glazed, so it's not visible through. It will let light through. It serves as stairwell, so it doesn't serve a bedroom either. And there is a restriction, so no additional windows are going into that elevation anywhere. Oh. You did that again last time as well. So the nearest position of that extension to the boundary is 4.6 metres from the nearest bit. The bit that's set in is 6.6 metres, but the overall separation from the neighbouring property, so if you're looking window to window, the overall separation, bearing in mind there's no overlooking, it's just the size and scale of the building, is 23.7 metres. So effectively, it's the width of this room twice, and then you're looking at a two-storey height flank elevation at the nearest point. When you then go in, yeah, sorry, there we go, 24.3. When you then step in, it's a greater level of separation, and those windows aren't obscure glaze. So those windows will be visible, bedroom to bedroom. But the separation distance from that, I think we were looking at 30, in excess of 34 metres from the internal bit. So if you can go back to the elevations. Yeah. Again, sorry, we're skipping around all the slides to try and show you everything. Which okay, is this one. So this darker section below that bit. So that's the other elevation that's facing the neighbours. And again, window to side elevation. So it's not window to rear, it's window to side on the neighbouring residential properties. And that's in excess of 34 metres in terms of separation distance.
Okay. You have a response
about the wall in the northeast corner.
I think the question from the town council was actually taking out 2 trees. So if you go to the site location plan, sorry, skipping around, they were talking about the 2 trees in that top hand corner coming out. I guess I will push that to members. From a landscape green perspective and protecting the privacy of future occupants, having a nice little enclosed path walking around the building for them and offering a degree of screening to the building from the wider vicinity, officers were quite happy for them to stay in. It wasn't proposed to be taken out, but the request was whether it could come out because they would increase light, I think, the neighbouring garden. But it's those 2 trees, I think, in the top hand corner.
Okay, thank you for that. And we've given this application best part of 2 hours now. Could we now move to a vote, please? Could I have a proposal in front of me? Councillor Carswell?
I don't know whether the legal officer wants to consider 2 things. Whether Councillor Sully was here from the beginning of the debate Also, for the
If I could answer that for you.
Okay.
Councillor Cully arrived when we were talking about the declarations, and so she was here when we started the debate for this matter.
And also, whether Councillor Collins wants to reconsider whether he's predetermined in view of his comments.
At the beginning of the meeting, it was raised with him. He did confirm that he was open-minded, so he has raised questions through the debate. If he's still satisfied he's listened to the debate in an open-minded form, then everything is fine.
Chair, I just would like to confirm that position that the officer has just advised you.
Okay, thank you for that. So I repeat again, does anyone wish to make a proposal on this? Councillor Cameron, followed by Councillor Lovell. Yeah.
First time doing this, folks. So I would like to propose in favour.
Okay, so the recommendation we have in front of us is to approve the planning permission subject to condition and the 106 legal agreement. And on page 56, you will see there are a significant number of conditions which have been referred to by the planning officer, and there quite a few pages that, as expected, a lot of detail around the landscape, the management, and all the other issues one would expect to see. And I don't intend to read them out or reiterate them. I think we've picked up on most of them, and I'm glad to see there is something around the construction as well. And I think that's really a really important issue for local people that we do pick up. It's absolutely in most urban settings, and this is an urban setting, the proximity to neighbours and the delivery of materials and working practices need to be done with care. So with that, I have a proposal. I have a seconder in Councillor Lovell, and could I have a show of hands, please, to support the recommendation to approve the planning application?
Can I ask a point of order first? And I'll ignore the fact my phone's going off, sorry. Can we just confirm the seconder was actually seconding the recommendation?
Yes, it was Councillor
I'm happy
Lovell.
to confirm I am seconding Councillor Cameron's recommendation.
Thank you. Okay, could I have a show of hands then to support the proposal in front of us, please? Right, the 9 and those against? You have 2, and any abstentions? And we have 1 abstention. So the application has been approved. Thank you very much indeed, everyone. And thank you to all the speakers and the individuals who have come here today. Really appreciate seeing you in person here. Right. I know it's almost an hour since we had a comfort break. Does anyone want 5 minutes to allow people to leave the room or have a drink, and then we'll move on to the next item? No.
5 minutes.
5 minutes, yes, everyone. We'll be back here by 20 past at the latest, please. We're now back online. Thank you very much indeed, everyone. We're moving on now to agenda item 6. To remind people, this is an application which came before us a month ago, and we asked the officers to go away and clarify some issues. So I'm hoping that we'll get some clarity on the issues we asked about, and then be able to not totally rehearse the whole thing again, but look at specifically the issues we wanted clarity on. So I'll hand over to Colton Langford.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to help you guys out, I'll just give you a quick refresher on the application. It was a month ago. So. Right, so the application is at Butley Landscaping, Wood Lane, Butley, just outside the street, and it's a sort of semi-proposed, semi-retrospective application for 3 number traveller pitches for their essentially recension of the landscaping business and offices as well. There's a location plan. The drawing on the left, as you'll see from the application, there's an extant permission on the site, and the drawing on the left suggests the extant permission, which was to run the landscaping business and also to have 6 number caravans on the site for holiday let use. The drawing on the right was essentially some time ago now, when what the site was like before they applied for the 6 holiday lets. So this plan is relating to the application, and it's for the 3 gypsy traveller pitches on the site, 2 down the left-hand side and 1 at the back, and some landscaping, etc. And maintaining the office structures, etc., with regard to the landscaping business. Some site photographs from a while ago. You saw these in my last presentation. Now moving on.
Can someone help out?
Stop working. Oh,
Yeah, put my.
you can put yours on. Next one.
Thank you.
Right. So after last meeting, we went back down to the site and we had a look around, and things were raised at that meeting with regard to whether the septic tank had been installed and whether there are other buildings on the site. And so you can see the left-hand photograph shows where the septic tank has been installed. The top 2 photographs there show the sighting of 2 shipping containers, one of which is being occupied by a single gentleman. And towards the back of those containers, there's also a type structure which is being used ancillary to the domestic uses on the site.
Could you speak up, please?
Sorry. The bottom left there shows the access track leading down towards the 2 existing traveller pitches further down outside the application site, and also sort of shows quite clearly that the existing public right of way there is not obscured. And the bottom right is just a general picture of one of the caravans there. And the aerial photograph of the site, quite recent, showing the 3 structures, but not the blue shipping containers. Move on. Right. So at last meeting, these are the reasons that you asked us to go away and investigate some further with regard to first being the package treatment plant having been installed. The applicant has got back to us with that photograph showing a tanker recently on site emptying it. So we can clearly confirm that it is on site and it is being used and it is being emptied from time to time. Also, you wanted some clarification as to the status of the containers that were referenced on the site. So those photographs I showed you earlier, the 2 blue shipping containers. So essentially, following our inspection, 2 20-foot containers have been installed on site, 1 container currently being resided in and the other ancillary domestic storage. Neither of these containers are shown on the proposed plans. Further domestic shed structure was also being used for domestic storage, was observed on site and again not on the proposed plans. The applicant's agent has got back to us and he's confirmed that these structures do not form part of the current application, as instructed their client that they will seek separate planning permission for their retention. Right, so since the last submission, we've decided to add, bearing in mind the situation on the site, we've added 2 additional conditions to the original recommendation. The first being that we couldn't rely wholly on the landscaping that was previously approved on the extant permission. There seems to be some sort of problem with horses leaning over the fence and eating it as soon as they plant it. So they're going to have to come up with some sort of plan, some sort of scheme to be presented to us to ensure that this doesn't happen in the future. And hopefully the hedge along the eastern boundary can grow, flourish, and become a landscape screening. Also, with regard to the blue containers, what we've suggested there, that any structures not indicated on the plans are within 3 months, their decision, are removed from the site. Okay. And just to make it clear and alleviate any concerns that members had. Right, so the recommendation is as before, subject to the addition of those two conditions which I've just spoken about. And we're recommending that it is approved in accordance with all the other conditions as well. Oh, yes, sorry. As part of getting around the phosphates issue on the site, because it's in the phosphate catchment area, with their site having 6 units, which they could implement, what we've asked for is those elements of that implemented scheme are omitted from the permission, and that can be done through a unilateral Section 106 agreement. So we would need, before we could issue any permission, should you grant permission tonight, we'd need a signed unilateral from the landowner confirming that they're happy, or they say they're happy already, to rescind that aspect of the previous extant permission. And that should resolve any of the phosphates issues. Right, that's it.
Thank you. We do have a number of speakers on this. I'd like to remind people you've got 3 minutes, and I'd like to be fairly prompt on this. The first one is Sean Shurston. I'm not sure, is he with us today? No, he's not arrived. Okay, we'll then move on to Mark White, followed by Andrew Coleman.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm speaking in opposition to this application. Can I have photograph 1, please? This is taken from the National Policy Advisory Panel on Gypsy and Traveller Housing. This is the standard you should be aiming for in a traveller's site. And the next photograph, please. This is the proposed plan, which looks quite good with its neat pitches, tidy parking spaces and lovely landscaping. The next one, please. Photos 3 and 4 are what we have at the moment. This is what the 5 families living at Wood Lane, which is a built-up area, see from their bedroom windows every morning and have to walk by every day. Imagine for a minute this is in your street. A few points I'd like to make and a few things I'd like to correct in your officer's comments from last month's meeting. Last month, Mr Langford put forward the idea that approving this application would reduce a number of caravans on the site from 6 to 3, with the effect of reducing the load on the septic tank. Clearly, he has not read his own report. In section 14.4 of the report, it states 3 pitches, each with 2 caravans, so still 6. It makes no difference if the caravans are mobile or static. The occupants still produce the same amount of waste, so no improvement. Has the septic tank been fitted correctly as per section 8.13 of his report? No. As per David Charland's email, which you have all received, the tank discharges into a stream which is illegal. There is no drainage field as stated in the report and no technical details provided by the applicant. In spite of saying they want to fit in with the community, the applicants have not improved the site in the 5 years they have been there. In fact, it's worse now. So will they carry out the necessary work to comply with their application? Of course not. They have already broken the terms of their application by illegally siting the 2 blue containers which they live in. They have also added to the accumulated rubbish on the site. I believe they will continue to act with impunity if you approve this application without some strong and enforceable restrictions. Finally, do you feel your officers and the applicant have given you the correct and reliable information you need to make a decision in favour of this application? If you do, I believe at best this could be seen as ill-judged and at worst, willful neglect to seek honest and correct information. I suppose a judicial review would have to decide which is right. Thank you.
Thank you. We now move on to Andrew Coleman, followed by Gemma Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon. It's still afternoon, not evening, isn't it? Good afternoon, councillors. My name's Andy Coleman. I'm speaking in a private capacity as my home overlooks the site. But for the record, I'm also a Buckley Parish councillor. I just want to make 2 points and 1 plea. The first point's already made, but I want to reinforce it. So my fellow parish councillor is Dave Charland, and he's the owner of Avalon Waste. And he was asked by the occupiers of the site on Saturday, the 31st of December, to empty what had been described in the officer's report as their treatment plant. In fact, it's no such thing. Dave tells me, and you've seen his email, that it's a 2,800 litre septic tank, not a treatment plant, which discharges via a pipe into a stream. Dave tells me, as I'm sure aware, this is illegal. So, Josh and Gemma, if you have an invoice for the treatment plant installation, you've been misled, as was the planning officer in describing it as a treatment plant. I very much hope, councillors, you will not be. Just to recommend, there is no treatment plant. Equally important, I feel, is the lack of an ecology report to accompany the application, despite the fact, despite publicly available records, that there are 7 protected species within 50 metres of the site. There have been 3 recent applications within the near vicinity. Dave Charland's own application for his own house, the sub-road development, which this committee recently approved, and a Barton Road development, all required ecology reports. This apparently does not. We have obtained some expert advice and been told that a local planning authority must not decide on an application until all necessary surveys have been undertaken. Failure to do this could lead to a legal challenge. So those are my 2 points. Now, a plea. Councillors, do not approve the application with conditions, but defer a decision until the waste issue is sorted legally and until ecology reports have been obtained. We know the pressure your officers are under to agree such sites. but that should not be at the expense of going against your own policies, both local and national, and your own guidelines. Also, please be realistic of the council's enforcement capacity. None has been apparent to us over the last 5 years. So please defer a decision. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us. We now move on to Gemma Johnson and Richard Burdett.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your opportunity to speak today in support of this planning application.
Would you get the speaker nearer to her? Thank you.
Shall I just start again? Sorry. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the opportunity to speak today in support of this planning application for 3 traveller pitches. I would like to directly address the concerns raised during the last meeting and provide updates on the progress we have made on site. The septic tank has been inspected by the planning officer and has been recently emptied by David Shepherd. I have provided photographs of the system and I'm waiting for an informal invoice, which I will forward to the officer immediately upon receipt. Furthermore, we have records from the Environment Agency, who investigated the site 6 years ago, confirming that the existing sewage system is suitable for up to 6 plots. This demonstrates that the current infrastructure is more than sufficient for the 3 pitches requested. Regarding lighting, we're committed to being good neighbours. We are happy to work closely with the council to ensure all lighting is low impact, ecologically sensitive to local wildlife and respectful to our neighbours' privacy. We have already begun planting a native hedge along the line of the property boundary, while some sections require replanting this winter due to the interference of some horses. Sorry, bear with me. We are implementing horse-proofing measures to ensure the greenery is established permanently, providing both visual screen and a boost to local biodiversity. With regards to the shipping containers currently on site, we will ensure that they are dealt with strict accordance with the local guidelines. I acknowledge that land has been a historic association with failed planning applications, fly tipping, antisocial behaviour. However, I want to emphasise that this is firmly in the past. Since my family has taken stewardship of the land, we have transformed it into a green, clean family homestead. Please be aware that those photos were taken in the wettest time of the winter possible. We are a traveller family who simply want to call Butley home and continue being responsible members of this community. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you for joining us again today. Richard Burdett.
Madam Chair, councillors, my name is Richard Burdett, and I've decided to come here today in support of this application as a resident of Butley since 1972. I do not see approval of this application should be anything other than routine, as it will remain exactly as it has been for many years and has no negative impact on the village. Indeed, with the village slowly dying, having lost its pub, the shop, and with pupil numbers in the school low, this application offers something different from the planned commercial developments, which include large, expensive houses that typically do not support young families in the area. In contrast, Gemma Johnson, who you just heard speak, whose youngest goes to the village school, is a leader with Barton St David's Scout Troops, where I've been for 10 years. And the term traveller in this is almost a misnomer, with these individuals being permanent part of village life. I'm aware that Annie, who's also a resident on the site, is delivering part of the Village Day plan for July this year. And Gemma's right, this site was a problem 20 years ago with boy races and noise. In fact, I was on the parish council at the time and met with the Mendip enforcement officer there. But those days are long gone, and it's now a peaceful, unobtrusive site with people who give back. And I urge you to do something radical and support the status quo and let it remain largely as it is. This site is not pretty, but then I live a quarter mile away in a house from about 1840, and you should look at my backyard. but homogeneity is choking our village. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for joining us. Right, the end of the speakers. Do the
Chair, may I just sorry, it's me, Helen, over here. Sorry. Can I just address the two people online that have got their cameras on?
Okay, certainly.
Yeah. Could David Wood and Martin Lee switch your cameras off? We've just got black visuals. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Would the planning officers like to respond to any of the comments made before I open it up to members?
Thank you, Chairman. Again, members, just to clarify some of the points around the waste management regime. So if we look back at the planning approval that was granted in 2017, the application was proposed with a packaged treatment plant. So if you look at the planning application form, there's a requirement for the applicant to say how foul sewage would be dealt with, and the applicant ticked packaged treatment plant. They could have ticked septic tank, but they chose to tick packaged treatment plant. And I think that's where the reference in the officer report comes from. Clearly, you've heard from one of the speakers as to what he thinks has been installed at the site. For your own benefit, the difference between a septic tank and a packaged treatment plant is that a septic tank effectively cleans the dirty flows that are within it, and then the discharge which is released normally into a watercourse or a drainage field is effectively cleaned up. That's the process that a septic tank does. PTP, but that's not what they've done. But just in terms of the volume, because again, we've been told by the applicant's agent that the volume which the septic tank can hold is 12,000 cubic litres, as opposed to what you've heard of 2,800. So again, we've been told one thing. The public speakers have found information via a third party about another volume that it holds. So it would require 12,000, sorry, in order to accommodate the amount of development that is proposed. So, but unfortunately, I can't provide you with any more information other than what the applicant's agent has informed us with. Again, we haven't had any of the paperwork, which obviously would have been provided when the infrastructure was installed. So again, it would seem that the point that's been raised by local residents is not unanswered on that point, and unfortunately, we can't answer it for you today, because I can only advise what we've been told, which is different to what the public speaker has advised you. I know that's not particularly helpful, and I would suggest, to be honest, that the application is deferred again whilst we secure further clarification on that point, because clearly that is a key point that you would need to be resolved. I would just say though, the occupiers are in the room, so they've heard what you've been told by a public speaker. Again, when we did the site visit, we did ask for them to provide as much information as possible in terms of the installation of the foul waste management infrastructure, and all they've been able to provide us with is the photograph and confirmation of what the agent said for its capacity.
Could I just ask one question? The difference between just under 3,000 and 12,000 is huge. Do we actually have the measurement of the tank? We can work out what the litrage holding if you knew what the size of the tank was.
No, we did ask the applicant for that information. The person who installed it would have had those details, but it wasn't forthcoming.
Okay. Can I, unless you want to have the officers take a moment? Otherwise, I'm going to go for a deferment again. We need to get this clarified one way or the other. We can't just accept a tick box on a form. Can I propose, unless you tell me otherwise, that we go for a deferment again?
With regard to, yeah.
Just so people online know, we're going to pause for a moment while some discussion can be taken.
Right, so on the actual and submitted with the application, right, they are proposing a PTP of 12,000 litres, which would be sufficient to cope with the 3 units on the site, just the 3 units on the site. So what we could do is do a time restrictive condition that is installed within a period of time, a specific period of time condition. So within 3 months of the date of permission, the tank is installed.
My personal feeling is that this is beginning to feel like I'm going down a rabbit hole, and I'm not convinced that we've got the enforcement capacity on this, because we're already looking for enforcement on the containers. Now we're looking for that. And also, I think we need to have a decent landscape scheme, given the quality of where they've got to so far on this. This doesn't feel comfortable. Does anyone else want to add to this conversation? Councillor Clark and then Councillor Reid.
I hope these people ultimately get what they want, Chair, because they deserve it and they're in the community and they contribute to the community. I would suggest they're not going about it very cleverly. We have to be unequivocal. Is this a package treatment plant or is this a septic tank? Now, I understand the package treatment plant was what was agreed. A septic tank is what's gone in there. Now, maybe they've been conned, but whatever, they haven't got what they were asked to put in to get the application through. And I would suggest, I propose we defer this for however long.
Yeah.
So that we can get to it.
Thank you. We'll have Councillor Reid and then, sorry, Alistair.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I can only agree we haven't got all the information we need, but just a question that's came up from the speaker, ecology report. Do we need one?
No, based on where the site is and bearing in mind when the application came in 2020, prior to the phosphates coming into effect, we didn't need any additional information with regard to how the site might be impacted by its impact on ecology on the site. But over the passage of the time, the only thing we couldn't get around was the phosphates.
Okay, I'm just trying to understand that ecology and phosphates are not necessarily the same thing, because there have been need for ecology reports on sites before phosphates rose.
That's correct, but the standard was much lower, sort of 4 or 5 years ago.
Okay, thank you. Interestingly, Alistair.
Okay, thank you. I'm not going to bore everybody up about this waste, but a couple of things have to be said. The case officers have put forward a lot of information. 2 members of the public have, and the applicant has, so they can't all be right, because everybody's going in conflict, so they can't all be right. Local information is very, very good and is key sometimes. The 2 speakers to my right both said this discharges into a stream, a public stream. That needs to be clarified, because if it is, that really is a no-no. But if I take you to page 68, 3.1, last sentence, it states, and I quote for you, the applicant has not been able to provide any further technical details regarding the installation at the time of writing. And further, The two manhole covers in the picture look to me, not speaking for anybody else, but just for me, to be really old, as if they've been there for some long time. So nobody, in my opinion, would have installed any larger tank to what has been there recently, because it looks very old installation. So somebody would have to clarify without doubt what the size is. Okay, there's no ifs or buts about it. And if the public speakers are right, this discharges into a stream, somebody has to look at that and really put something on the table and say, well, this is what we're going to do. Thank you.
Right, I think you would like to say something and then on to Councillor Denton.
So just to kind of follow up on the point that Carlton made previously, what's before you is a proposal that includes a very specific requirement in relation to installation of a packet treatment plant, which would be adequate for the development as proposed. If we were looking to potentially approve, then we could impose a time-specific condition in relation to installation. I would, in fairness to Carlton, maybe say within 6 months rather than 3, because I think there's probably the sort of thing that would run into practical issues in terms of obtaining all of the appropriate kind of equipment and then doing an installation within quite a tight time frame. But that would be a requirement which I've got a background in enforcement counsellor. I'd be confident that our existing service could deal with that on a conditional basis, particularly in a situation where potentially if we were talking about doing this prior to commencement, that approval would be lost if they failed to do it.
But this is a retrospective, so it's not prior to commencement.
It would be prior to commencement of any additional works in terms of the new caravans.
Okay.
I'm sure that Leslie would give us some advice in relation to that, but...
Councillor Denton.
Well, I agree with you, Ros. I just think it feels very messy, and I don't know why I can't speak into this.
You're underneath a speaker above, I'm afraid.
Ah. Okay, does that work? It feels very messy, and I'm not sure if it's a treatment plant. As the gentleman, the two local gentlemen have said, it goes into a river. We're all very concerned about that. We know the impacts that all has, and as Alistair's just said, that is a real issue for us. I just think that there's not enough information, and deferring it would really be more work for everybody. So I would happily propose to go against officer recommendation on this.
Okay, thank you for that. Is that a formal proposal? And seconded by seconded by Councillor Robbins. Councillor Cameron.
Thank you, Chair. I'm a member of the Axonbury Drainage Board, just for clarity. And as colleagues know, we have a specific issue in Glastonbury with regards to our non-bricks and mortar community. One of the points that Mr. Healy suggested was that we got sufficient enforcement capacity. I can say categorically at this meeting, we don't. We've got loads of outstanding enforcement issues across my specific patch. And so I'm with Councillor Denton on this. Sorry, I'm still learning names. I do apologise, colleagues. And I wouldn't be happy at this moment in time with the information that we have to approve anything. It just feels all very woolly.
Okay, thank you for that. Could I just have clarity? If we don't approve this, you said at the beginning of your presentation that there was an extant planning application already on the site. How materially different is it? Will we still have the septic tank, which was called a package plant, or what? What's the position on that extant planning application? I can't hear you.
It's for 6 holiday lets, which they have no intention of implementing.
Okay, so by refusing at this stage until we get total clarity, which is the proposal in front of us, means that the applicant would have to resubmit a new application with the appropriate details in place.
Yes.
Okay, are people clear on that? Would anyone, I think Councillor Grant would like to make a comment.
Thank you, Chair. What would happen if we deferred it for 6 months? What, only to work out what the state of the applications is and whether they still stand.
I think it would be enormously helpful to determine, at this point, what we're looking for, because we have, if you're content with the possibility that there is not an appropriate package treatment plant on site, but the proposal requires one to be placed, then if we assume that it is not there now, are you content with the approval of one which was then required? And I understand what you mean by enforcement capacity, sir, but I can tell you that a breach of condition notice and the enforcement of that is vastly simpler than any possible alternative investigation. And I say this from 10 years of bitter experience as an enforcement officer. So that's where I'm concerned about what if we're deferring it for any period of time at this point, what are we seeking? Because if what is before you is acceptable, and you can assume that what is there at the moment is not acceptable, then you need to move forward on that basis.
Okay, I think my understanding, there are two points of contention. One is the lack of the stated treatment plant, and secondly is the two existing blue containers. Are we going to do the proposal in front of us, or are we going to give the applicants a chance to go away and resolve the two outstanding issues? I think that's the crux of what's being put in front of us at the moment. Does the legal officer want to make a comment? Otherwise, I will take the proposal in front of me.
Chair, you have an alternative proposal on the floor, which has been proposed and seconded to go against the officer recommendation here. So you need to take that vote.
I will do so, but I just want to get total clarity in the room as the implications of it. Unless there's any other questions at this stage, I think Councillor Collins wanted to make a comment, and then.
Yes, I mean, I would be happy with the alternative suggestion put forward by Mr. Heady. But my question was, as I understand it, the sheds and containers planning permission is to be applied for, but yet in the condition, in one of the conditions at the end, it's remove those containers and sheds within 3 months. So it seems a bit crazy if planning permission for those sheds and containers are going to be applied for to be asking them to remove in 3 months. If we really want them removed, I think 6 months would be fairer, because trying to get stuff moved in this mud at the moment is quite complicated. But if I could just have clarity on that, is it the same containers and sheds that are to be applied for planning permission that we are asking to be removed within 3 months?
That's correct.
Okay, well, if that's the case, I would like to suggest that it would be 6 months as opposed to 3 months to move them, because I think that's just.
We're going to have then two proposals in front of us. One is to actually go against officer recommendation, and the second one is to defer for 6 months. And I will take advice on this, but I take the first one first.
That's correct.
Right.
And that proposal is to vote against the officer recommendation.
Okay, so we have a proposal in terms of Councillor Denton, seconded by Councillor Cameron, that we go against officer recommendation on this. Is that correct in my understanding? Yep. Okay, could I have a show of hands on this, please?
2, 3, 4.
Or those against?
2, 5, 6.
6. And any abstentions? Two abstentions. Councillor Clark, yeah, abstention, yeah. So the outcome of that is, can you repeat the numbers, please, so we're all clear?
Yes, Chair, 4 councillors voted in favour of the proposal to vote against the officer recommendation. 6 councillors were against the proposal and 2 councillors abstained.
Okay,
so
the proposal fails.
Yes.
Thank you for that. Do I then have a recommendation for a deferment for 6 months? Is that my understanding, reading of the room? I'm sorry, Councillor Clark, I can't hear you.
You're asking for a proposal?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll propose it.
Okay, and can we have clarity as to what we're actually asking for? We're asking for a resolution of the with documentation of a package treatment plant on site and the removal or an application in front of us for the 2 blue containers. Is that correct? Yes.
Chair, just to say, in terms of the containers, the reason why we had added a condition requiring their removal, because although you heard in Carlton's presentation that the applicant's agent had said that they would be applying retrospectively, as the planning authority, I don't think we would be approving the retention of those units for any form of residential accommodation. Storage potentially, but not accommodation. So the reason why we put that condition on was actually just to give the council some control in the event that, one, the applications aren't submitted, we've still got the fallback position of seeking their removal via that condition. So in terms of the resolution of the information that you haven't been satisfied with, really it's confirmation of the proposed arrangements for the management of foul waste. Obviously, we've got a situation whereby there is some infrastructure. You've heard something from one of the public speakers. We've been told something different by the planning agent representing the landowners. Once we get clarification on that, we will know if what is in the ground is sufficient to deal with managing foul waste, and if it's not, we can then advise what would be required, and we can put that as a conditional requirement on any consent going forward. I think we would still have the issue of the storage containers, and we would still be seeking their removal because, as I've said, I don't think they would be suitable at all for any form of residential accommodation.
Okay, can we have total clarity? We're not asking for someone to tick a box or give you assurance. We want documented assurance around foul waste. Yeah, proper document assurance. And the third thing I would add, and you mentioned it earlier, and that is the resolution of the landscaping, which you say you're asking, forget the horses, we need to have proper landscaping on that.
Yeah,
boundary.
The issue of the landscaping actually was to be resolved by one of the additional conditions that Carlton had suggested. So that was to reflect the fact that the existing landscaping doesn't do that effective screening. Okay. So with the revised condition, that would be in place. So if there is time, then the applicant can develop that landscaping plan and submit it as part of the updated package, and then it can be conditioned.
Right, Councillor Clark, you're proposing it. 6-month deferment to is there anything you want to add to that?
May I just ask Simon, and you touched on it just now, are we talking about a 12,000 litre package treatment plant, or are we talking about a suitable alternative, or we really don't care? What are we talking about, Simon?
The application form that was submitted for this application back in 2020 said they were proposing a package treatment plant, and we've worked out that in order for it to serve the 3 units, it will need to have a capacity of 12,000 litres. So
thank you.
Ultimately, that's what we will be seeking, either evidence that it's been submitted, that's been implemented and it's in the ground, or if not, that's what will have to be proposed.
Okay. Councillor Reid, are you seconding Councillor Clark's proposal?
No. I'm very worried about somebody living in a blue container. So for the next 6 months, so I think 6 months is far too long. I mean, I voted on the last proposal because this present one is becoming a bit of a mess. We don't quite know where we're going or what we're doing. So I voted to refuse it, so that give the applicants a chance to go back. And as they've put in a new application anyway for these containers, it would have been quite straightforward to gather it all together in one sensible new proposal. But unfortunately, that's been turned down. So I'm suggesting that 3 months would be plenty time, Chair, for the applicants to put in a new application for the blue containers and to find out what we can do with this treatment plant.
Yeah. Could I suggest that what we need to do is give a reasonable timescale and say up to 6 months. It is for the applicant to actually get on with and sort this out. Do I have a seconder for Councillor Clark's proposal? Thank you, Councillor Carswell. Right. The proposal is that that the applicants will be given up to 6 months to resolve both their stated treatment plant documentation and what's the word? Installation, together with resolution on the blue containers and proper landscaping of the boundaries for the amenity of the community.
Thank you, Chairman. That's clear. Just on the blue containers, because I say, as I previously advised, it wouldn't be acceptable to be provided as accommodation or even ancillary accommodation. There's, so I think probably as a committee, you need to decide if you're looking for that application to be submitted so you can consider it and then come to a decision yourselves, or if you want to indicate to the applicants that those containers should be removed. Because effectively that our recommendation to you that we're asking you to approve required that. And it required it to be done within 3 months.
This is Councillor Clark's proposal. What do you want to do with the blue containers? So we're saying we want the blue containers removed from the site, full stop.
In 6 months' time, Chair, I would like to go to the site, or whoever has decided that they're going to oversee this, go to the site, see the containers removed, package treatment plant working, we'll all be happy and they can get on with their lives.
Okay, is there clarity on that? Right, we have a proposal in front of us, seconded from Councillor Clark, seconded by Councillor Carswell. Could I have a show of hands, please? All those in favour of the proposal? Eight proposed. All those against? 1, 2, 3. Any abstentions? 1. Okay, so the proposal has been carried out. And since we have the applicant with us, could I say, we obviously want you to succeed in this, but you've got to get it right. So please work with the officers to okay. Well, you have enough time and the spring is on the way. Right, okay. Shall we move on to the next one? This is getting a protracted meeting, and my apologies. On to the next one, which is application 7, which is the land at Mount Pleasant Pilton. We have four speakers for this, and we'll go with Lorna Elstob, who, to give us a view. This is demolition of the existing coach house and the construction of a single-storey dwelling within the community of Pilton. And we're just waiting on the app.
Right, good evening. So as it said, apologise, the reference number on there is incorrect. But you've got all the correct details in the reports. So as the chair's kindly explained, this is an application on land at Mount Pleasant in Pilton. It's for the demolition of an existing coach house, construct a single-storey dwelling. So just to give you an aerial view there with the blue arrows. So the existing coach house is within the cluster of residential properties there. This gives you a bit of a better context. So the coach house is actually, I don't know if my cursor will appear, that small building there, Sutley House being within the same ownership, hence why it's included within there. And there is the shared access. Also there is a legal right of access across that for, I don't want to mispronounce it, but the dwelling just outside the red line. I've just included this slide because there have been comments from the public with regards to the right of way and the visibility of the proposed dwelling from the right of way. So the two pink lines are public rights of way. You've still got, you can see there the site. So there is property between the public right of way and the site, so you'll get a glancing view of it. But as the public right of way was mentioned, I felt it was important to show where those legal rights of way are. So this is the existing site plan. So we've turned it just for your orientation purposes, and your coach house is in your bottom left-hand corner now. So with the access in the bottom right-hand corner. And then as we go across, this is, I've sectioned it just for clarity, so you're not looking at the existing house as well. So this is the proposed site plan with the new dwelling, and the hatched area is where there is a legal right of access for the other bungalow there. So whilst within the land ownership, there is an existing legal agreement in place. So just to the context of the floor plans here, so we have a mezzanine, but it is designed to be an office space upstairs, and although that shows it as full width, the actual working space of the mezzanine is sort of restricted to that square where the word is, but just so put up most of the living accommodation bedrooms on ground floor level, just that working space at on the mezzanine there. So these are the elevations. So your bottom elevation there, so that actually reuses the stone from the existing coach house. So that's the elevation you'll view as you approach. And then the other elevation is sort of the top elevation. You can see the top line there. So that's a side elevation that actually overlooks part of the sort of amenity space there. And then these are the other two elevations. So the top elevation is sort of your back elevation as such, and then the other side elevation. Drawings are always really hard because they're not three-dimensional, but just for clarity, it is an L-shaped building, which is why I've put the floor plan there as well. So where you look, the blank wall as such with the little circle is the bit that's against the boundary. It then steps back. So where the windows aren't up against the boundary, they are set back from the boundary. Just for clarity, sometimes the drawings aren't as easy to visualise. So just some photos. That was part of the application, just so that include those for you to see. So as you enter the site off of Mount Pleasant, the driveway as such to the right-hand side is where you would go up to the site. There are other properties that are accessed to the left of the white gable end building there. So these were actually taken this morning. So they aren't out of date, they're literally taken this morning. So this is the end of the existing barn. So you've got the existing wall and you've got the planting that's on the other side. The main house is having a lot of work done, so there are a lot of builders' vans around. So, but that's the shared access into the other property. So that's the bit that there is a legal right across that is protected. So yeah, excuse the dumpy bags in the front. That's what the barn looks like now. There have been structural assessments that it isn't capable of conversion, hence why we're looking at the demolition and the reuse of the materials on that principal elevation. Bear with me. That's just gives you a sort of a bit of an idea of the structural integrity or lack of in the building. In the background of that, let me get, is Fox Orchard that you can see behind the tree line. And then looking to the other side, that is Harvest Gate. So that reference is in the report. So they're taken from sort of on the corner of the existing building. Just another one to show the general condition. Where possible, we like to convert. Sometimes it's just not viable, but if we can reuse the materials, that's always a good thing. And just for context, that's Sutley House. So that's the other house on the site. So if you're stood by the barn, you turn around, that's the other dwelling, which is having sort of quite a lot of work done to itself. Just for reference, and I apologise, this wasn't included in the report, there is an existing planning permission on the site for a bungalow. So that is what the existing permission, so it was granted in 22. So that was the site plan that has been approved. And then that's the elevations of the previous property that were approved. So my recommendation is for approval. We're looking at some conditions on there with regards to sort of sensitive lighting. There's a comprehensive ecology report that has been submitted, and there are clear recommendations which we would look to be complied with. The works do require a protected species licence, which the applicant and agent have agreed to the pre-commencement side of it. And we want to ensure that the parking that is proposed is retained so that it doesn't impact on the other properties and that the right of access is retained. So we wouldn't want those to sort of be swallowed up and used as anything else. So we've asked to ensure that before the dwelling is occupied, those spaces are available. So thank you very much.
Thank you for that. We now have 4 speakers. The first one is Harvey Bailey, followed by Nick Hall, and then Kevin Murphy, and finally Chris Beaver. Yeah, fine, up to you. So first one is Nick Hall then.
Good afternoon, committee. My name is Nick Hall. I'm a Pilton Parish Councillor, but I'm making this speech in a personal capacity. As you know, the Parish Council objected to this development. It did so unanimously. 6 local residents, including myself, also object. There are no supporters. And please note that one resident who's here, whose boundary wall could be removed, was not informed by Somerset Council of this application. So my 4 main issues are, number 1, despite what the description says, it is a two-storey development. There is a first floor, and it is for a study, but of course a study could be a bedroom, couldn't it? So, and it's 25 square metres. The second point is the scale of this property is too much for the plot. The existing coach house has a floor area of 44 square metres. The proposed development will be 115 square metres, which is 2.5 times bigger than the barn or coach house. Third point, the design and appearance of the proposal, which is black timber cladding and zinc roofs, are not in keeping with Pilton's character. Why isn't local stone being used in line with DP7? And the final point, the property is too close to the eastern boundary. I think 3 points need to be clarified in the planning officer's report, and I'm pleased the planning officer has mentioned the relevant planning history. So there is approval for a single-storey residential development using traditional materials and set back from the boundaries. So why wasn't that mentioned in the report? Why is it just sprung on us today, sprung on the kind of members today? My second clarification is that the relevant planning policies that are mentioned should include DP1 and DP4, as they are used in the arguments to support this application. I would argue this application is not in the spirit of these policies. Black cladding is not a typical feature of Pilton properties. And finally, to clarify the planner's reports, under the section on planning balance, there is a recognition that the proposal will conflict the spatial strategy. It then goes on to say that the harm is minimal because the site is close to the development boundary of the primary village. Now, my understanding is that Pilton is not a primary village and it doesn't have a development boundary. So is the harm still considered minimal? Please refuse this application. It's totally out of keeping with Pilton's character. It's the wrong building materials. It's too close to the boundaries and it's too big for the plot. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. I think now Harvey Bailey.
Hi, good afternoon. My name's Harvey Bailey. I basically live directly next door to the proposed coach house, or coach house workshop, as it was when I was a child when I grew up. It never was a garage. It wasn't about 20 years ago changed, but that was that. Yeah, there's numerous reasons why I feel that this possibly shouldn't happen. One is particularly that there's the light concern, and also the fact that the mezzanine of the building proposed to go up on the 6th step. You'll look straight from the 6th step, straight into our garden or into our kitchen, our dining room and our lounge. Basically, if any of you have visited the site, I don't know if you have, where we are, none of our houses look into each other's garden. We all basically live very privately, very quite happily, but we all get on very well as neighbours. All our neighbours have been there for many, many years. And, I just feel we also have it in our garden, especially, we have a huge amount of wildlife at night. Beyond us is just the fields that continue on towards the festival site or on towards Pill. In the garden, we have owls every night. We have bats by the masses. I also like to do astrology, which has no problem effect because we have no light including problems with the light because it's permanently dark. None of our houses are lit in the evenings in the gardens. So, it is a lovely, lovely place to live. With the proposal, especially with this building, being directly on our boundary, we also have a telegraph pole that sits on the side of it about a foot away. That will have to be reseated and resat and redone. I know it's easy enough to be done, but no one has been asked, or no one has asked us about doing it. We also have compost heaps that back up against the back of the building that have been there for 40 odd years. Nothing has been said about those either. I just feel that, and also, my next door neighbour, Tony Bailey in Harvest Gate, the side of his building has 5 windows and a front door looking into it. We've never had that. I know it sounds wrong, it might sound a bit snobbish, but it's not. It's where we've all lived. And I just feel that this is just going to be such an intrusion. I mean, yes, the building needs to be done. And it needs to be restored, rebuilt, and put back up together again, because it's either going to be in my garden or it's going to be my neighbour Tony Bailey's garden. But it needs to be done out of natural stone the whole way round. and the windows need to be to the front. So they face Sutley House, which is where their building originally was. Not everyone else. There isn't a single window, I don't think, if you put your pictures back up, of the driveway and how the driveway will look. You know, the light intrusion is just, I think, it's unacceptable. The mezzanine is unacceptable for privacy pavilions. There's one there, window there that sits like that. It's going to go. There's another window that's going to sit like that. That will look straight into my garden, even though the wall's like that on it. I have several young grandchildren, some more on the way. Love playing in the garden, paddling pools a whole lot in the summer, and I don't feel I want anyone, looking in on them particularly, because I don't, we haven't ever had it. Why should we? But also the black cladding also brings a real problem because of fire issues. There is no access to it.
Please.
Yeah, okay, fine. There's no access to it. So unless they come all the way up around our drive and then 75 feet across the garden to be able to try and reach it. They'll,
Okay. Thank you very much indeed for your contribution. Right, I'll move on to Kevin Murphy.
Good afternoon. We live in Cydonia, which doesn't seem to feature very highly on the plans there, but we are the property most directly affected by this, because in order to get to our house, you have to drive across the application site. We have enjoyed very good, there's Cydonia, yes, very good communication with Mr. Ben and his manager, Martin Lee. We've been very pleased with that, and we have remained neutral in our comments, pending just a few things that we're concerned about. I don't know how much you're able to take into consideration being able to get into one's home, but for us, of course, that is paramount. So I'd like to point out, first of all, the previous planning application that was referenced could never have been built. It was mysterious as to how it was granted in the first place, but there we are. That's another thing. The proposal as it stands now would be built over our existing land registry access way. We have agreed with Mr. Ben a variance of that, which is a simple variance. We're all happy with it, but the deed for that has yet to be legalized. So technically, until that's granted, this is being built right across our right of way. We're not particularly concerned that it's going to be a problem, but who knows? We just feel it's important that our concerns are noted in this regard. As I say, communication has been very good. The access way is only 4.5 meters wide at its narrowest point, according to the agreement for our new right of way. So concerns are obvious that when they're trying to build this new building, how are we going to get into our home? We have sought reassurance of this, and we've had verbal reassurance that, of course, we won't, you have to be able to get into your home. But if this is going to go on for 18 months or whatever, obviously we don't want to be carrying our groceries way up that access way. Again, communication is very good. We have faith in Mr. Ben and Mr. Lee. We just want our concerns noted at this point, should something go astray in the future, which we don't anticipate. We've had some problems with post not being able to be delivered because of the current work being done on Sutley House, but they're always very good. They will move their vehicles immediately when accessed or when asked. But if it were a fire appliance or an ambulance, and they're building this new building, which will be even more tightly constricted, our concerns are just amplified about that. So if we could get reassurance, perhaps a more formal reassurance that access to our home won't be restricted during construction, we have no objection. We've been very pleased with Mr. Ben and Mr. Lee. There will be no room, however, in our estimation, for further development. Should this want to extend this by 2 feet here or there, it's really, really going to have an impact on our access. So we're remaining neutral. We would not object, provided that we can get the reassurances for access. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your time today. We now move on to Chris Beaver.
Thank you, Chair, councillors. Yeah, I'm Chris Beaver, planning consultant acting for the applicant, Mr. Ben. I think I'll just tear up my original speech and just respond to the points that have been raised by the public speakers. But firstly, I think the important point to note is that the site does benefit from an extant planning permission. So the principle of a new build residential development on this site is clearly accepted, and there is a planning fallback position. Just dealing with Mr. Hall's points, the two-storey point, I mean, I think it's semantics, really. The building is a single story to the eaves. There is a proposed mezzanine that's going to be used as an office. It's well set back. It has its aspects facing west. The other roof lights in that roof are just for light, and the applicant would accept an obscure glazed sort of condition if that's a concern from the committee. The point about scale, this is, I think, a very well designed building, and it's clearly subservient to the host dwelling, which is Suteley House, and fits on the site well, very, very well in our opinion. I think the design comments, I think it's a sort of a much more contemporary design. The extant permission was effectively a very suburban sort of bungalow. This is quite an interesting design. Creative use of materials, and from our perspective, it is a well-designed building. The points around the sort of proximity to boundaries and things, I think it's important to note that the boundaries to the adjacent dwellings, even in the winter months, you can see from the photos, are quite well screened, and we've had a good review of the plans, and we agree with the planning officer that the proposal doesn't give rise to any direct interlooking. Just having a quick look through here. Yeah, some of the other matters about sort of property access and things are all duly noted, and anything relating to sort of boundaries during the construction phase are sort of property matters can be dealt with by Party Wall Act, and also a sort of construction management plan to retain the existing sort of rights of access. So in summary, we think this is a well-designed scheme. It won't give rise to loss of amenity to neighbours. Of course, it will introduce change, but we think it's a positive change, a new additional dwelling, and we commend the scheme to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we need to respond to anything before we go to the members?
The only thing I'd say, in light of the comments that have been received, there would be scope to potentially include an additional condition with regard to a construction management plan, which would ensure that the access is retained. So that would be consideration for the members as to whether they would feel it was appropriate to include that in the proposal.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, go on.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just to add to what Lorna's said, obviously the access issue is an existing situation, and there is, as we understand it, there are legal arrangements in place for Cydonia to be accessed across the land that is owned by the applicant. So that is a legal issue, so it's outside of planning in the main, and it's an existing issue. So it is something that we looked at as part of the assessment of this application, and it's, you know, our position is that should be separate, and we don't really need it. However, if members did want that construction management plan, it could be a condition, as Lorna has just said.
Okay, thank you. As we go into discussion, could you put up on the screen a site map showing the orientation of the building, the new building, in relationship to the adjoining properties? Because I'm not sure we saw that, and I think that would be helpful.
Chair, I don't believe there actually is a plan. So we've got the proposed site plan that I've extracted that doesn't show the neighbouring properties. If I share with you the location plan,
yeah,
you've got where my cursor's hopefully moving around. That's where the barn is. So that then gives.
So on that basis, you've got a L-shaped building.
Yes.
So what's the orientation of the L-shaped building to the adjoining properties?
So there you go. So you've got, let me get the right property names. So Fox Orchard is where you've got the end of the L sort of facing to your left there. So where it is flush to the boundary as like the existing existing building. To the top of that plan is where you've got accessing into Cydonia, and to the bottom of the plan as such. Just want to get the right house name.
I'm sorry, this is quite confusing, I think,
yeah.
for people. So what you're saying is that the courtyard of the L shape is adjoining the boundary with Cydonia?
No, Cydonia is to the north. So that's where the shared access is with Cydonia. So at the very top, where you can see a gate as such, that is the access point into Cydonia. To the left is Fox Orchard. And then to the bottom.
So the north on this
gate. Thank you. I was searching through. So to the bottom of the plan is.
So in fact, you need to turn that upside down to actually get the north. The north is actually to the south.
Yeah, the tiny little circle, the dark, it's not very clear on there, but the dark line is to the bottom on that circle, which is your compass as such.
Oh, thank you. I didn't see that.
No, it's not very clear on there.
Right. Okay. Any questions? Councillor Sully?
Thank you, Chair. I think that scale and access are issues or points of discussion with the local community and the voice of the local community. And I think it's a pity that we're not really seeing that in the presentation. And so I'm a bit nervous about the impact of this on the local community, who I think are a community that speak up when they do feel that there is impacts on them. I know this community very well. And so I'm nervous about this one, and I don't think the presentation is really helping me to feel less nervous about it. I do want something to be done with that building. And there is obviously the will and the intention to do something great with that building, but does it have to have such a detrimental impact on those around it? I mean, like a wall, is a wall going to be, the questions, is a wall going to be taken down? Is there going to be restrictions to access? Very polite neighbour asked that more than once, you know, that it shouldn't be a hope, should it? That you hope that you're not going to be impacted by access. That shouldn't be a hope down to a potential management plan. It should be a necessity. I think lighting came up as well about it. So is it the right, is it, I asked my colleagues, I'm totally on open-minded about this. I don't know which way to go with it. So I asked my colleagues, is it the right planning application for that particular spot with all those buildings around it? Is it just tipping point of impact on neighbours in material for material reasons? So I really want to hear what others have to say. Thanks.
Okay, I've got Martin Lovell, Councillor Reid and Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chair.
No. Okay, Lovell and Reid.
Yep. As there isn't an existing elevation nor dimensions on the new one, could we have an indication of what the difference in height between existing and new is? Thank you.
Obviously, we haven't got scale drawings for the original, so I haven't physically been out to measure it. I'm sorry, I'm just going back to the officer report to where the, so at its tallest, the proposed dwelling is 5.2 metres. The existing coach house did have a floor within it, but we haven't had scale drawings from there, so I can't give you an accurate measurement of what it is.
Okay, does that really answer your question, Martin?
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
I could happily make a decision based on knowing what that difference is, because that is a clear thing about the impact.
Yeah, okay, perhaps we'll give the officers a chance to provide information. We will go to Councillor Lovell next. Councillor Reid, sorry, and then I've got Carswell.
Thank you, Chair. A question
And then-
first of all, if I can. I mean, I know Pilton very well, of course, but what I shamefully don't know is whether it has a conservation area. Could you let me know that?
It does, and this is
Is it- I'll be-
outside of the conservation.
Are we in the conservation area? Oh, well, perhaps we should be, because we're right in the heart of the village there. The two main concerns that have come up are the size of the application. So could you compare this? We've been told it's 2.5 size times the size of the building that's already there. Okay, the old coach house has to come down. I think we're all agreed with that. How does the new application compare in size, in ground size, to the application that's been approved already? Is it bigger than that? And there's the other one, of course, is building materials. It doesn't look as though the same sort of building materials that fit in with what is the heart of the village already. So I'm rather concerned that they are inappropriate. If we're knocking down the stone barn anyway, there's plenty of stone to rebuild. So I wonder, could we have an answer on the size, please?
Bear with me, I've got to go into the system to actually measure it. But just for clarity on the materials, the principal elevation does reuse that stone.
Right. I've got Councillor Denton, Councillor Carswell, in that order, I think.
Oh, that's from here. Does that work? So what is the legislation on increasing footprint? Is there any legislation on that? Because I know that we've been told before that a piece of land has, the house cannot fill the whole space, but it just feels like we're increasing footprint remarkably here in comparison to what's already there. And then I have a few comments that.
Okay, thank you for that. Can you, the difference in footprint between what has been approved already and this one?
Yeah, there's no specific legislation on footprint increases. It's a design question. So what we need to look at is the bulk mass layout and all of that, is that appropriate for the site? Our view is obviously that it is.
Oh,
Couple of things.
yes, do.
So the other thing is, just saying that it's semantics about another level of a house is not right. It goes up another level, so it has an impact on people. And I'm just concerned about how it's backing up against that fence, and that isn't great either. I understand that the report says that the architectural styles in the village are really wide, but I'm not sure that that gives a license to make it almost jarring, which what it feels like in relation to the other houses. But I think Barry will be quite relieved that permitted development rights have been removed. So yeah, those are just my concerns at the moment, because I feel that it's having an impact on people's lives in quite a big way. It's not just a couple of words here and there.
Thank you. Councillor Carswell.
Thank you, Chair. Just a few comments. The height proposed is 5.2 metres, but we do really need to know what the existing elevation is of the existing property, and also on the planning that's already been agreed, what the elevation of that was. and whether the existing planning is larger or smaller than what is now proposed. I would say that it'd be a good idea to have the obscure glass on the mezzanine. As to design, I actually prefer the preferred building to the buildings around it, which don't look like they need to be conserved at all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I would make 2 or 3 comments on this. One is that this is an infill with traditional housing around there. There is no other roof lights, which is why you've got dark skies there. The amount of fenestration, which will be very difficult to blind, let alone reduce light spill on this property, is really quite significant. And together with the materials, which are totally, well, not wanting to condemn modern design and whatever, does this really fit or does it jar with the existing properties? I just feel that well, we do have a traditional bungalow being approved. It didn't have roof lights like its adjoining properties. It was traditional in terms of the way it was built, which is why I think it fitted in. And also, I do think that it's an awful lot of square foot house or square meterage for the actual plot size. And again, it just feels probably a step too far. And therefore, I don't think I can support this, particularly around the level of fenestration. And we've just got to start reducing light spill on these ones. And this is not just the roof, it's huge floor to ceiling lights around the property too. It will be significant. You want to respond there? Have you got a number for
Yes.
difference in the square footage?
Thank you, Chair. I think Lorna might have the square footage difference, but just in terms of the height of the existing building. So I've gone back to the details submitted on the previous application, which does include a survey of the existing building, and it's 5 meters. So the proposed now is 5.2. So they are
comparable.
Yeah. And then just in terms of the concerns about light spill, yeah, I mean, it's noted. Lorna has checked nearby buildings, and a number of them do already have roof lights. And, you know, it was for that reason that we didn't think it was reasonable to require that the roof lights on this one that are proposed are, you know, have any reductions, you know, also given that on existing buildings, permitted development normally allows roof lights. But if that was something that committee was concerned about, we could of course add a condition that restricts the passage of light in order to keep that light spill down. And that's something that the agent has indicated the applicant would be would accept. Yeah, Lorna, do you have the difference in? We're just coming up with calculations to compare the existing and the proposed.
Who's that?
It's a member of the public that's joined. Mr. Wynne, could you turn your camera off, please?
But just while Lorna's coming up with the calculations, I mean, it's not a large building. You know, we're talking about 2-bedroom building here. I certainly wouldn't describe it as overly large.
Roughly, because they're not very clear, but roughly is what's approved.
So 81. Yeah, so 81 square meters is the previous proposal. The bungalow, that was about 81 square meters internal area, and the current is 115. It's 115. So yeah, it's bigger, but it's still, I would say, ballpark.
Okay, any other thoughts at all, or can we go to a recommendation? Alistair?
Oh, it's okay, thank you, sorry for that. very quick, not going to take up any time. The height of this property, as I see it, is no difference to a standard bungalow, albeit you have something in the roof, but it is by default called a chalet bungalow because it's a bungalow with something in the loft space. Makes no difference. The height stays the same. It's a 2-bedroom bungalow, I think. Am I correct in saying that? It's 2-bedroom where you couldn't get much smaller, albeit the floor space obviously is biggish because they want a nice property. You have to let people build houses and you have to let people live, etc. And this, on the balance of probabilities, is actually pretty good, more so than it is not good. On the basis of everything I've heard just now and seen the presentation, I propose we grant permission. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, do we have a seconder for that? Who's proposing that we go with officer recommendation? Councillor Lovell. Right, any other comments or are we happy to take it to a vote? Yep. Right, we have a proposal in front of us to accept officer recommendation. Are we going to want any additional conditions in terms of lighting or anything else? No? Okay. Councillor Lovell?
Well, I'd wish to see some of the things you mentioned, Chair, included, if they're not already included. Light spill and all those matters. I mean,
Light spills, so we would, in terms of any roof light reduction. I think the officers now have come up with a wording which is about not telling people how to do it, but looking for a reduction to 30% of the light spill, which I think is not an unreasonable approach.
I can read out a condition if you would like to simply add that, or we can come up with a condition in consultation with yourself. You know,
We'll do it afterwards. I'm conscious I need to get this done before 6. Right, okay, thank you for that. So we have in front of us a recommendation. Councillor Sully?
Was the management plan going to be already part of the condition? I think we do need a management plan.
I think the officer indicated that was an additional one she was recommending as part of the conditions. So on that basis, we have a proposal from Councillor Hendry, seconded by Councillor Lovell, to accept the officer recommendation with the additional elements of management plan and lighting spill. Could I see some votes, please? Hands in one direction or another. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in favour, and those against? 2, 4, 6. Sorry?
Do you believe there were 7 on?
Okay, well, look, I think if the officers counted 6, I'm quite happy to stay with 6, and there's 6 against. Any abstentions? Okay, how many people voting? Does that make sense? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 people voting. So that would make 6 and 6. And so I think then we go to the casting vote, which I'm afraid lies with me, and I will be consistent and I will say that I vote against it. And on that basis, we have finished at 5 to 6. So could I introduce? Yes, could I introduce the final item before 6 o'clock, which is item 8? And we now, as long as we've started it before 6, we're okay. So we have in front of us a 2-storey extension with the parish council approving and the officers refusing. And we have.
So you haven't actually refused that application.
Oh.
You voted to not accept it. You have not voted to.
Okay, I've been corrected. Apparently, we were voting and we voted to approve, and I voted against that. But that means we now have to vote again to vote against the application. Is that correct? Yeah, my apologies. I've never had that before. So we have a proposal in front of us to reject, and do I have a Somebody, thank you, councillor Reid, seconded councillor Cameron. And the reasons to object were, I think, the ones which were highlighted by the parish council, which is materials, level of fenestration, and the impact on local amenity. Are those the issues for refusal? Anything like to add to that? Would the officers make any comment on that? That those are.
Size, Chair, if we could.
And the size. Okay, on that basis, could I have a show of hands to refuse? Those against? To those who are abstaining? One. Yeah. Sorry, I think Alistair, you were confused there. This is the, just for clarity, this is a proposal now to refuse the application against officer recommendation.
All right, okay.
And that's what people voted on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, it's fine.
Great. Thank you for that. My apologies. I've never been in a position of having to do that. So, right. On to item 8, and this is the application from Cokesley. We have just one speaker, and hopefully we have the planning officer here today, Kelly.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just say on the basis that according to the clock there, we're not quite at 6 p.m. and we're just about to start the application. So there is no need.
No need to do a vote. Thank you. Right.
Thank you, Chair. This application refers to a detached property called Westfield on the main road in Cokesley. It's inside the settlement limit, and to the northeast, the applicant owns an ancillary building which is just outside the red line on the plan there. These are the existing plans, and the application proposes the conversion of the existing garage, which is attached to the property, to additional accommodation for the house. It proposes a 2-storey rear extension and an extension at the front. The issue with this application is mainly around the rear extension. I don't know whether you can see those plans there at the top. This is the extension here, and obviously this is the first floor that goes above it. And the reason that this is contention, in my view, is that there's a balcony involved in this development. You can see the existing elevations on the top row there, and then the bottom 4 are the proposed. And in the northwest, you can see that balcony proposed on the rear. Now, as far as all other issues like scale, design, materials, they're all acceptable. There's no impacts on highway safety, ecology, or anything like that. The key issue here is about the overlooking potential from the balcony to the neighbouring property. I've just zoomed in on the balcony there so you can get a feel for it, and the applicant has gone some way to try and address the concern by putting obscure opaque glazing in the side that would face directly over the neighbouring property. But as you can see, the balcony projects, the glass area projects forward of the stone pillar by 40 centimetres. So anywhere really on that balcony, even if you're sat in those chairs, you will have a view of the neighbouring property. That's a photo of the front of it facing onto the main road. That's a vision of the rear. So you've got 2 first-floor windows already. The one with the white downpipe on the far right of the picture is the neighbouring property that I'm concerned about. Obviously, you've got 2 first-floor windows there that potentially overlook that garden already. But my opinion is you're not going to stand at those windows because they're bedrooms and look out. But the balcony, you have the potential to have a drink in the summer, sit out with friends, and you're going to stay there longer than you would be looking out the bedroom windows. That's another picture of the projecting gable of the house with the brown windows, and that's the neighbouring property, as I said, with the white windows next to it. This is a view from the window that's recessed of the property, so closer to the neighbour's boundary, and that's looking across into the neighbour's garden. That's another view from the same window, looking across into the neighbour. And again, you can see that the gable on the right is the window furthest down the bottom of the garden. And that is a view from that projection that we talked about. So that's the window furthest away from the balcony, looking across the garden. So it's recognised that there are some overlooking issues already, but as I said, I think the nature of the use of the balcony will result in overlooking of that neighbouring property, and that's why we're recommending refusal. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Shall we then go on to the one speaker on this? I believe the applicant, Emily.
Chair, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I am the applicant for this proposal, and I would like to briefly explain the thinking behind the rear balcony and why we believe it would not result in an unacceptable loss of amenity. Firstly, I would like to note there have been no objections from neighbouring properties, and we've also spoken directly with the neighbours most closely affected, who have confirmed they have no concerns with the plans. In addition, the Parish Council have formally recommended approval and specifically recorded that there are no concerns regarding overlooking or loss of privacy. The location of the balcony is important. In the submitted plans, we are removing the balcony at the front of the house because it overlooks the main road and nearby houses and resulted in mutual overlooking. That was a conscious decision taken to improve privacy for both us and others. By contrast, the rear balcony faces open fields, not neighbouring homes, and is intended to enjoy that outlook rather than overlook other properties. The planning officer has attended the site and viewed the existing outlook and the relationship with the neighbouring property from the upper windows. From those positions, it is not possible to see the neighbouring patio area outside of their rear door, and this would become even more restricted once the extension is built, as it will project beyond that patio area and introduce additional screening. Where there is a neighbouring property to the side, the submitted plans already include an obscure glazed privacy screen. This creates an inset balcony which completely blocks views to the left from our internal windows. As a result, we will be able to see less to the left than we can at present. Any view of the neighbouring garden would only be possible by stepping onto the balcony and deliberately leaning over. Even from the far right-hand side of the balcony, the planning officer noted that only the very end of the neighbouring garden would be visible, which is an area containing a large pond and is not used as a seating or patio area. The balcony also faces north, meaning it receives limited direct sunlight and its use is naturally constrained by orientation. I would also note there are several properties along the same road with rear balconies overlooking the same fields, many of which do not have privacy screens. Our proposal is consistent with this established pattern, but includes greater mitigation. Given the lack of neighbour objections, the Parish Council support and the open outlook to the rear, and the privacy screening already incorporated into the design, we respectfully believe that the proposal would not result in an unacceptable loss of amenity. For those reasons, we would ask the committee to support the application, if necessary, subject to a condition securing the privacy screen. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, and thank you for staying with us until the end. Right, we have, first of all, opportunity for the officers. Do you want to make any additional comment? No, thank you. Do members of the committee have any comments or questions of the officer? Councillor Denton and then Councillor Hendry.
So if nobody is objecting and not even the nearest neighbours, then I would like to propose that we go against officer recommendation.
Okay, do I have a seconder there? Okay. In terms of Shane Collins. Right, before we go to take that vote, can we perhaps have opportunity for people to make any comments they want to? Councillor Hendry.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Denton's absolutely correct. I was going to say the same myself. I fail to see why this has been recommended to be refused. Other properties apparently on the same road have got exactly the same balcony. The neighbours next door, which is in contention or not in contention, but are the ones who would be looked over allegedly, I've got no complaint with this whatsoever. If they're going to put up a screen, a privacy screen, as the person said, it's already in the plans, I absolutely fail to see why this has been recommended for refusal, and I agree with Councillor Denton wholeheartedly. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from anyone? Councillor Lovell and Councillor Sully?
Worthwhile remembering, colleagues, that the current neighbour may not object, but a future neighbour may. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I missed that. Labour didn't object?
The current neighbour doesn't object. A future neighbour, a different person, may object.
Yep. People don't object for a number of reasons. When you're living in proximity to someone, we always must remember that. Councillor Sully, first of all.
Just want to note a diligent report from the officer. And I also want to pay tribute to the public speaker. She's been here 4 hours. I'm sorry about that. But I think I will vote to go against the officer recommendation. I'm very sorry. Okay. I feel like I'm traitors here. Very sorry about that.
Does the officer want to make any further comments at this stage?
I don't think so, Chair. I think people probably made their minds up.
Okay. Could I ask one question? It's a rarity to actually hear an officer recognise overlooking, and I was particularly interested in why this one particularly triggered your concerns.
I think, Chair, I recognise that there are other properties further down, and I tried to investigate the history and those decisions. I found one of them. It was made some time ago, back in early 2000s, I think it was. I think this one, there's a degree that neighbour hasn't got overlooking, apart from those windows, and I recognise that's a degree of overlooking. But like I said before, I think sitting on a balcony, when I go on holiday, I want to sit there with a glass of wine and stay out there. And yes, I recognise that the neighbour probably at the bottom of the garden hasn't really got an area that he particularly might want to sit at, but we have to safeguard in the public interest the amenity. And I'm just thinking, okay, he might not have objected. Who knows why? I don't know. But as Councillor Lovell said, we have to safeguard public interest going forward. Yeah. So it's not just now, it's for whoever wants to use that garden in the future, might want to lie down there naked. Okay. Who knows?
I think you wanted to add something.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say it is a judgment call on this one. We note there are no objections. We've come to the recommendation that we've come to based on our own objective assessment. What I would say is we obviously don't have the next door neighbour objecting, but if we did have vociferous objections from that neighbour, our call should be the same today. We should be making the same recommendation. So if members would be making a different recommendation because the next or decision, beg your pardon, because if we were in a situation where we had vociferous objections from the next door neighbour, then well, that ought to lead you in a direction to go today. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll just make a comment. I have a neighbour who put in a balcony. The neighbour changed and came back. The balcony was extended. and the noise level as he chooses to do his DIY on his balcony is quite significant and quite imposing on the amenity of myself and my neighbours. So all I would say is that I think overlooking of balconies is something which one shouldn't underestimate the impact, because balconies are noisy. So it's nothing. It's not in this community. It's in another community. But just be just aware of that. So anyway, we need to go to a vote fairly soon. But is there somebody wanting to speak before we vote?
We have noisy neighbours and angry neighbours, and the next person who comes to live there is going to be unsociable and this and that and the other. But as we're reminded many times in the past, Chair, we vote on what's in front of us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, but we vote with experience, which we hear from you quite a lot as well. Okay, then we have a proposal in front of us, and I believe it was. Forgive me. Who proposed it? It was Dawn, wasn't it? Yeah. Dawn, and seconded by Martin, I believe.
Shane,
oh, Shane, my apologies. It's too late in the day. Right. The proposal is to go against officer recommendation, and we need to have some reasons for doing so. Any reasons? No. Do we need them, or can we go straight to? No. Okay, so voting with the proposal against officer recommendation, could I have a show of hands, please? 9. Those against? 3. And any abstentions? No. So on that basis, the proposal is successful, and the application is gone against officer recommendation for approval. Okay, great. Thank you very much indeed. Given the witching hour, unless anybody has a very strong view about the report on the appeals, shall we call it a day? Yep. Thank you very much indeed, everyone.